Chapter 1277. Of course, Ji Wucua knew that if he fell into Ji Tianqing's hands, he would definitely die. If he begged for mercy and cowardly, not only would he not be able to escape death, he would also lose all his face. If that was the case, he might as well be more stubborn. Perhaps he would still have a chance to live. Ji Tianqing's left hand held his soul tightly as he stared at him coldly. He said in a low voice, "Ji Wucua, you should know that if you fall into my hands, it will be difficult for you to die even if you want to." His voice was low and cold, causing Ji Wucua's soul to feel cold. A chill came from the depths of his soul. Ji Wucua remained silent as he pondered how to escape. Ji Tianqing asked expressionlessly. The left protector and third elder were chasing after the little black dragon. Where did they go? Where is the Heaven Evasion sect? If you know what's good for you, tell me the truth. Otherwise, I will make you wish you were dead. Ji Wucua knew that it would be difficult for him to escape. His only hope of escaping was the left protector and the Heaven Evasion sect. Ji Tianqing taking the initiative to ask was exactly what he wanted. He hurriedly replied, "At the time, they flew towards the northwest. As for the location of our sect, so what if I tell you? Do you dare to attack the Heaven Evasion sect in order to save that black dragon? Ha ha ha. Let me tell you the truth. There is no need for our sect master or grand elder to act. The left and right protectors can easily crush you. You talk too much." Ji Tianqing's tone was cold as he shouted. A few divine soul spikes condensed in his palm as he ruthlessly stabbed towards Ji Wucua. Ah! Several holes appeared in Ji Wucua's soul. He immediately howled in pain and fainted. Ji Tianqing grabbed his soul and flew across the night sky at lightning speed, heading back to the Sun and Moon Great Furnace. 14 hours later, he returned to the Sun and Moon Furnace and chased towards the northwest. He flew through the sky like a streak of light, searching for traces of the little black dragon along the way. He searched for traces of the divine dragon in the sky. However, after searching for half a day, he did not find any clues. As he searched, he silently calculated, "It's already been 7 days since the incident. The little black dragon is most likely dead. If it still hadn't been caught, it would definitely still be on the run, already a million li away. If it's already been captured, then it's most likely been brought back to Heaven Evasion sect." Thinking of this, he shouted at Ji Wucua, "Ji Wucua, what is the cultivation level of the left protector and third elder?" Ji Wucua's divine soul was riddled with scars. He was already on the verge of death from the torture. He wanted to play dead and not answer, but Ji Tianqing cut him a few more times with the sharp blade of his divine soul, and the pain made him want to kill himself. After struggling and twitching for a while, he became much more obedient. His voice was weak as he said intermittently, "You want to take the black dragon back from the left protector?" That was simply wishful thinking. The left protector is the third strongest person in the sect. His strength has reached the 7th level of the soul refinement realm. Even the third elder was at the 5th level of the soul refinement stage. Our Heaven Evasion sect's strength is not something you can imagine. I advise you to let me go, otherwise your fate will be. Before he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing's hand viciously squeezed, causing his divine soul to creak. Ji Wucua let out a miserable cry of pain. After a few howls, he fell into a muddled state. Ji Tianqing's face was gloomy as he flew. He continued to calculate, one at the 7th level of the soul refinement realm and the other at the 5th level of the soul refinement realm. Even if the little black dragon didn't hesitate to use its life, it wouldn't be able to escape from those two. There definitely wouldn't be a miracle. The little black dragon must have been captured by those two and brought back to Heaven Evasion sect. Thinking of this, he turned around and flew towards Heaven Evasion sect. He had already interrogated Ji Wucua before and found out the approximate location of Heaven Evasion sect. Ji Wucua wanted him to go to Heaven Evasion sect to seek revenge. Ji Tianqing was very clear that Heaven Evasion sect was a hidden sect that had been passed down for thousands of years. Their strength was terrifying. Even the 3 ancient families of the Middle Continent couldn't compare to the Sky Evasion sect. Perhaps only the imperial courts of the various clans could make Heaven Evasion sect feel fear. Heaven Evasion sect was a tiger's den. If he entered, he would most likely die. Even so, he did not hesitate to rush over. He had to save the little black dragon. Heaven Evasion sect was about 300,000 miles south of the Sun Moon Great Furnace. The sky over the sea was covered by endless white clouds. There were many scattered towering mountain ranges sitting in the vast sea of clouds. The entrance to Heaven Evasion sect was in one of the mountain ranges in the Sea of Clouds. Ji Tianqing only used 8 hours to fly to that sea. He flew high into the sky and passed through the Sea of Clouds. His sharp eyes looked around. 100 miles ahead, there was a 10,000-foot-tall mountain in the Sea of Clouds. It was completely black and there was a lush forest at the top of the mountain. That mountain was very steep and there were strange rocks on the mountain. It looked very ancient and gave off a mysterious aura. There were a few mountains scattered in the Sea of Clouds, but they were all very ordinary. They were not as majestic as that mountain. Ji Tianqing flew towards that mountain and asked Ji Wucua, is the entrance to Heaven Evasion sect on that mountain? Ji Wucua was probably tortured to the point of collapse or scared out of his wits. He did not dare to lie or hide anything. He weakly replied, yes, that is the Heaven Evasion sect. There is a Big Dipper star formation on the mountain peak. It is the entrance to our sect. Ji Tianqing nodded expressionlessly and continued to ask, what is the situation of the guards on the mountain peak? How do you open the Big Dipper star formation? Ji Wucua was silent for a while. He seemed to be hesitating and struggling. Ji Tianqing was about to form a soul blade to torture him when he was terrified. He quickly begged, Ji Tianqing, stop. I will tell you. I will tell you everything. There are 9 guards on the mountain peak. They are all elite disciples of the Sky Origin stage. The leader of the guards is half a step away from the soul refining stage. As for the Big Dipper star formation, only the leader of the guards can open it. Before Ji Wucua could finish, Ji Tianqing interrupted him and sneered, Ji Wucua, don't try to fool me with this nonsense. It's useless. You have no value to live anymore. You can die in peace. Ji Wucua was shocked. He shouted in fear, no. Ji Tianqing, you cannot kill me. If I die, you will never be able to enter our sect. You will never be able to save the Black Dragon. We can make a deal. I will tell you how to open the formation and how to find the left guardian without alerting anyone. I am the 6th elder of Heaven Evasion sect. I know all the secrets of our sect. If you let me go, I will tell you everything. Let you go? Let you go and tell the others? How naive. Ji Tianqing curled his lips in disdain. Chapter 1278. Ji Wuqiao had seen Ji Tianqing's terrifying capabilities and ruthless methods. In order to survive, he had no choice but to compromise. Even if he had to sell out the sect's secrets, he wouldn't hesitate. Of course, he was praying that Ji Tianqing would let him go so he could enter the Du Tian sect. The Du Tian sect was filled with powerful arrays that could make Ji Tianqing unable to hide. The experts in the sect would soon discover Ji Tianqing's tracks, and then blast him to smithereens. However, Ji Wuqiao didn't think that Ji Tianqing was not only cruel, but also extremely confident. No need. I don't need your information. I can still kill my way into the Du Tian sect. As soon as he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing grabbed Ji Wucua's soul and squeezed it. Boom! A muffled sound rang out. Ji Wucua's soul shattered on the spot, turning into a few pieces. Until he died, he still didn't understand why Ji Tianqing dared to kill him when he didn't even know how to activate the Big Dipper star array. Could it be that Ji Tianqing was so arrogant that he thought he could break the array and kill his way into the Du Tian sect? That was the Big Dipper star array. An array set up by the Du Tian sect's ancestor who was half a step away from the primordial spirit realm. Sadly, Ji Wuqiao would never know the answer. With a heart full of resentment and doubt, he disappeared forever. Ji Tianqing placed Ji Wuqiao's soul into the broken sword and gave it to the Burial of Heaven to consume. The Burial of Heaven was now a half-step divine weapon. Not only could it consume the soul crystals of beasts, it could also consume the souls of powerhouses. Though using these soul fragments to recover the energy of the Burial of Heaven was like throwing a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. But many a little makes a mickle, and it was better than nothing. The more soul fragments he devoured, the more benefits he would gain. After dealing with Ji Wuqiao, Ji Tianqing held onto the broken sword with his left hand and took out an interspatial ring with his right hand. This storage ring belonged to Ji Wucua. Previously, when he killed Ji Wucua's fleshly body, he took this storage ring. After Ji Wuqiao died, the soul imprint on the ring collapsed and it became an ownerless item. Ji Tianqing opened the spatial ring and saw that it was filled with mountains of spirit stones, pills, and materials. There were also many rare treasures. However, he wasn't interested in these treasures. After rummaging through his interspatial ring, he found a dark gold medallion. The token was simple and dignified, and there were golden dragons and cloud patterns carved all around it. On the front, there was the word G, and on the back, there were the words Heaven Evasion Sect. Without a doubt, this was Ji Wuzua's identity token. He held the token in his hand and stared coldly at Sky Mountain nearby. His lips curled into a cold smile. A moment later, he flew toward Mount Tianshan with the token in his hand. He moved as fast as lightning, not hiding his tracks and aura at all. Shwa! In the blink of an eye, he was above Sky Mountain. Looking down on Sky Mountain, he saw the situation on the mountain. It was just as Ji Wuzua had said. The peak of the mountain was a flat land with a radius of 10 miles. There was an ancient mountain gate that was hundreds of meters tall. The pillars of the gate were carved with dragons and phoenixes. On the lintel of the gate were the words, Heaven Evasion Sect. It was majestic. On the empty ground inside the gate, there was a platform that was thousands of meters wide. It looked like an altar. This was the Big Dipper star array. It was made with 108,000 precious gems. It shone like the stars in the sky and emitted a powerful and mysterious aura. There was nothing inside the array. It was obvious that it hadn't been activated yet. 9 powerhouses in white robes were guarding around the array. They looked emotionless and didn't speak a word. Ji Tianqing looked over and saw that most of the 9 powerhouses were humans. There was even one of them from the Yao clan and 2 from the Aqua clan. Most of them were at the 5th level of the Sky Origin stage. The leader was at the half-step of the Soul Tempering stage. Shwa! Ji Tianqing's body flashed and he descended from the sky. He landed in front of the gate. His face was filled with anxiety. His eyes were filled with worry as he ran towards the array. He looked like he was in a hurry. The white-robed powerhouses guarding the array immediately noticed him. Everyone was immediately alerted. Their eyes flashed as they looked at him. Clang! They pulled out their swords and sabers. Shwa shwa shwa! Everyone rushed over in a flash and surrounded him, blocking his way. Who is there? How dare you trespass on our Heaven Evasion Sect's mountain gate? How dare you? Stop right there. Otherwise, my sword will show no mercy. Many of the guards shouted coldly as they pointed their swords at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing showed no signs of fear. He took out the dark golden token and held it in his hand. With an anxious face he shouted, I'm Brother Ji's friend. I've been entrusted by him to deliver a message to your sect. Everyone, this matter concerns Brother Ji's life. It is extremely urgent. Please make an exception and let me pass. The white-robed guards heard his words and saw the dark gold token in his hand. They immediately let down their guard. Everyone looked at each other and put away their swords. The leader of the guards walked out from the crowd and stood in front of Ji Tianqing. He frowned and asked, Who are you? Who is this Brother Ji you speak of? Ji Tianqing pretended to be out of breath, looking tired and anxious as he said intermittently, I'm a cultivator living in seclusion on Dark Star Island, and I'm a good friend of your honorable sect's 6th elder, Ji Wuzua. A few days ago, Brother Ji was chasing a woman in the ruins of End. However, he met with an accident and was heavily injured. He was in danger, so he gave me the token and asked me to come to your sect to ask for help. Hearing him say this, the guards came to a sudden realization, and the vigilance in their hearts disappeared. However, the leader of the guards was very cautious. He continued to ask, Why didn't Elder Ji send a message? Why did he ask you to come and ask for help? Also, who is he asking for help from? Our sect has strict rules and outsiders are not allowed to enter easily. Who are you looking for? Ji Tianqing had already thought of an excuse and answered without hesitation. Brother Ji met with an accident and his physical body was destroyed. Where did he get the communication jade token from? Previously, when Brother Ji left the sect, he went with the left protector and 3rd elder. However, they separated and something happened. Brother Ji asked me to come to your sect to ask for help from the left protector. Please make an exception. When the leader of the guard saw that he could mention the left protector and 3rd elder, the guard in his heart was completely removed. After all, he saw with his own eyes that the left protector, 3rd elder and Ji Wuzua left together. A few days ago, the left protector and 3rd elder caught a flood dragon. However, Ji Wuzua was nowhere to be seen. Now that he heard him say this, The leader of the guards understood the situation and hurriedly nodded. Sir, I am impressed by your help. I will get the guards to activate the array now. Please wait for a moment. With that, the leader of the guards gave an order to the guards. A few white-robed guards immediately joined forces to cast a spell and activated the array with a special method. Chapter 1279. After about 100 breaths of time, the 9 white-robed guards opened the Big Dipper star array. The 10-meter-tall altar lit up with a dazzling silver light, condensing into an oval-shaped door of light. This door of light was the portal that connected the Du Tian sect to the outside world. The Du Tian sect was located in an alternate dimension, or rather, a barrier. It was very hidden and safe. In the past 2,000 to 3,000 years, no matter if it was the demons or beasts of the returning ruins or the experts of other races, none of them had been able to invade the Du Tian sect. The captain of the guards bowed at Ji Tianqing and made a pleased gesture when he saw the teleportation portal was opened. Sir, please enter. Many thanks. Ji Tianqing nodded and immediately flew into the portal of light. Whoosh! With a flash of light, his body was swallowed by the white light and the portal quickly disappeared. In the next moment, Ji Tianqing entered a barrier, and his feet landed on a soft grassland. He stood on the grass and looked around expressionlessly, observing the situation. He saw that he was surrounded by grass with a radius of 10 miles. Behind him was a circular array made of jade. There were 9 stone pillars in the array. 10 miles in front of him was a lush forest. After a few dozen miles of forest, there was a clear lake nestled at the foot of a majestic mountain range. This was a majestic mountain range that was 1,000 miles long and stretched from north to south. It was like a dragon lying on the ground. The mountain range was filled with dense forest and dense spirit chi. There were several peaks that were thousands of feet tall. On those peaks, one could faintly see some houses and palaces made of gold and red bricks. They shined brightly under the sunlight. It was clear that the Du Tian sect's barrier was very similar to the Shao clan's barrier. They were both small worlds with a radius of a few thousand miles. Not only was this place isolated from the outside world, but the spirit chi here was also very dense. It was very suitable for cultivation. The mountain range in front of him was where the sect was located. On the highest peak, there was a dazzling palace. It should be the Du Tian sect's main palace. Ji Tianqing had learned about the Du Tian sect before, and knew that it was a hidden sect that had existed for more than 2,000 years. However, this sect had always been mysterious and low-key. No one knew about it. Ji Tianqing flew into the sky, crossed the grassland, and flew towards the mountain range in front of him. At this moment, Burial of Heaven's voice sounded in his mind. Tianqing, you don't know much about the Heaven sect. Do you still plan on barging in? Ji Tianqing said through his soul, although the Heaven Vanishing sect is mysterious, I've asked around before and managed to get some information out of Ji Wutsua. There weren't many disciples in the sect, only 200 or 300 of them. However, they were all talented geniuses. Most of them were at the sky origin stage. As for soul refinement realm cultivators, it was said that there were more than a dozen of them. They were either chief disciples, deacons, or elders with real authority. The strongest people in the sect should be the left and right protectors, the sect leader, and the Grand Supreme Elder with the highest status. However, there is one thing that I can be sure of. There is no primordial soul realm expert in the Heaven Ascension sect. Burial of Heaven pondered for a moment before saying in a serious tone, with your current strength and methods, as long as you don't meet a primordial soul realm expert, your life won't be in danger. However, there are many experts in the Heaven Vanishing sect. It will still be very dangerous for you to barge in. Moreover, you didn't come here to destroy the Heaven Vanishing sect, but to save the little black dragon. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, I know all this. Burial of Heaven. Do you have any good suggestions? Burial of Heaven said calmly, you have 2 choices. You can charge in and start a massacre in the Heaven Vanishing sect to force them to hand over the little black dragon. Alternatively, you can hide and investigate the little black dragon first before acting according to the circumstances. Ji Tianqing said without hesitation, the people of the Heaven Vanishing sect aren't stupid. They must have seen that the little black dragon is a divine beast black dragon. That's why they tried so hard to steal it. There hasn't been a divine dragon in the past 10,000 years on the continent. Since they got it, how could they hand it over? For the sake of the little black dragon's safety, I have to sneak in and find it first. However, before he could finish speaking, A cold yell rang out from the sky behind him. Stop! Ji Tianqing's body trembled. He hurriedly stopped and looked behind him. In the sky 10 miles away, there was a thin young man in a white robe flying over at lightning speed. He was around 30 years old. He had a dignified appearance and was quite powerful. He held a treasured sword and gave off a cold aura. His eyes contained a sliver of malice. Clearly, he was not a kind person. Ji Tianqing studied him a few times. His expression did not change, but he guessed at this person's identity. He should be an elite disciple of the Heaven Vanishing sect. After all, this person was at the 6th layer of the Heaven's origin stage. The white-robed young man arrived before him. He placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and stared coldly at Ji Tianqing. He balked. Who are you? Why have you barged into our sect? What are you trying to do? Ji Tianqing was not angered. He said expressionlessly, I am a cultivator from Dark Star Island. I am a friend of your sect's elder, Ji Wutsua. I have come to deliver a message. A cultivator from Dark Star Island? You're a friend of my master? The white-robed young man immediately frowned. He said warily, Why haven't I heard of Dark Star Island? What's your name? Since when did my master have a friend like you? As he spoke, the white-robed young man drew his treasured sword and pointed it at Ji Tianqing's throat. He barked, Speak. Who are you? Seeing this, Ji Tianqing cursed inwardly, This is bad. My luck is too bad. I've actually met Ji Wutsua's disciple? Seeing that he was about to be exposed, he hurriedly took out Ji Wutsua's identity medallion and waved it in front of the white-robed young man. Little brother, it's great that you're brother Ji's disciple. Something big has happened to your master and he's on the brink of death. I've been entrusted by him to seek help from your sect. Ji Tianqing pretended to be overjoyed and no one could find fault with it. Indeed, the white-robed young man hesitated. He asked worriedly, What happened? What's wrong with my master? Seeing that he had taken the bait, Ji Tianqing revealed a solemn expression and said in a deep voice, Little brother, this is not the place to talk. Can we talk somewhere else? As he said that, he wanted to pull the white-robed young man to a secluded corner. However, what he did not expect was that the white-robed young man was filled with wariness. He broke free from Su Zimo's grasp and shouted angrily, You're just pretending to be mysterious. You must be up to no good. If you're really my master's friend, follow me to the meeting hall now and explain it to the elders. Seeing how cautious the white-robed young man was, Ji Tianqing turned to observe the surroundings. Seeing that there was no one around, he looked coldly at the white-robed young man and smirked. Chapter 1280. What did you say? The white-robed youth clearly didn't react in time and was stunned. At this moment, Ji Tianqing released a formless spiritual shockwave that blasted towards the white-robed youth's head. There was a buzzing sound in the soul. The white-robed youth's soul was immediately knocked out and his eyes closed. He didn't even see Ji Tianqing make a move and didn't even know how he fainted. Swish! The white-robed young man fell straight down, crashing into the grass below from the air. Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He grabbed the youth's collar and dragged him into the grass, disappearing immediately. The grass and the sky were silent as if nothing had happened. A quarter of an hour later, the white-robed young man drilled out of a dense forest. There was no one around and no one noticed his appearance. Furthermore, no one would know that the current him was no longer the same as before. He stood at the edge of the forest and looked at the distant mountains and palaces. His lips curled into a playful smile as he muttered to himself, This is really a pillow given when I'm sleepy. Things are much easier now. Li Chong, Ji Wutsua's last disciple, 32 years old, 6th level of the Sky Origin stage. This identity should be able to help me find the little black dragon quickly, right? Without a doubt, this white-robed youth's body had already been possessed by Ji Tianqing. He knocked Li Chong unconscious and dragged him underground. After interrogating him for some basic information, he killed Li Chong. Then, he hid his true body in the sword world and his soul entered Li Chang's body, transforming him into Li Chong. Only experts at the 8th or 9th level of the spirit refinement stage could see that there was something wrong with his soul. Apart from that, no one could tell if he was real or fake. Swish! Ji Tianqing flew into the sky with a treasured sword in his hand and flew towards the mountain range in the distance. Although Li Chong was an inner disciple, he was also Ji Wutsua's last disciple and usually lived in the Heaven's Fate courtyard. That was Ji Wuzua's residence. Li Chang lived there because he was doted on by Ji Wuzua, and also because it was convenient for him to cultivate and seek guidance. The divination courtyard was located in the southeast, on a mountain peak filled with blue trees. Ji Tianxing was in no hurry to rush to the heavenly fate court. He flew above the mountain range and stopped for a moment to observe the situation below. There were a total of 7 mountains in the majestic and verdant mountain range. Every mountain peak was a place where spiritual energy gathered. There were houses and courtyards built on the mountain peaks, as well as magnificent palaces. Of the 7 peaks, the one in the middle was the highest and was the main peak. It was where the Heaven Evasion sect's main palace was located. Behind the mountain range was a vast and boundless forest. The surroundings were enveloped by a soul-grade grand formation, and it was isolated from the outside world. Ji Tianxing could vaguely see that there were huge demonic beasts moving about in the vast forest. It was clear that the forest was where the Heaven Ascension sect raised their demonic beasts. The left protector and third elder captured the little black dragon. Will they imprison it in that forest? Ji Tianxing could not help but have this thought in his mind. However, he silently used his spiritual energy to search for the little black dragon's aura, but he found nothing. I can sense the little black dragon's spiritual energy from 200 li away. It seems that the little black dragon is probably not in this mountain range. Ji Tianxing thought to himself as he turned and flew toward the 6th mountain peak. Whoosh! 15 minutes later, he arrived at the peak filled with blue trees and landed in the plaza at the peak. There were several azure-robed disciples practicing their swordsmanship on the plaza. When they saw him arrive, they hurriedly stopped their practice and respectfully bowed. Greetings, Senior Brother Li. Ji Tianxing didn't pay any attention to them. He looked straight ahead and walked through the square, heading towards the majestic Heaven's secret courtyard. The divination courtyard was very large. There were 3 palaces, 6 halls, and 4 side courtyards. Those who were not familiar with the terrain would be confused and lose their sense of direction. Ji Tianxing expressionlessly passed through the courtyards, halls, and corridors toward Li Chang's residence. Along the way, many young disciples, servants, and maids respectfully bowed to him. However, he did not respond, nor did he speak. Fortunately, Li Chang was usually more indifferent, and his temperament was ruthless and cold. Those disciples and maids all feared him and wanted to avoid him. Naturally, no one noticed his abnormality. After Ji Tianxing returned to Li Chang's residence, he locked himself in his study and quickly flipped through the books. If he wanted to quickly understand the Heaven Evasion sect, reading was the best choice. If he asked others, he would arouse suspicion and risk exposing his identity. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. When Ji Tianxing left the study, night had already fallen and the lanterns had been lit. He had read for an entire afternoon and finally understood the information he wanted. He had a clear understanding of the Heaven Evasion sect. While there was no one around, he silently left the divination courtyard and headed toward the main peak of the Heaven Evasion sect. His target was the left protector. The little black dragon was most likely in the hands of the left protector. The left protector's residence was in the left palace of the main peak. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianxing arrived at the main peak and stopped in the night sky. Under the night sky, the dozen or so palaces and residences of the main peak were all brightly lit. There were very few people walking around the various residences and palaces. It was very quiet. However, Ji Tianxing used his soul to investigate and found that there were sentries all around. There were at least several dozen elite guards. He landed in the square in front of the palace and swaggered toward the palace on the left. When he arrived at the entrance of the left palace, he was blocked by 6 guards. Halt! This is the left protector's residence. You are not allowed to trespass. Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, I am Elder Ji's last disciple, Li Chang. I have come to visit the left protector tonight and ask about my master. Please inform her. The leader of the guards looked at him and said in a deep voice, You brat, you came here yesterday and I told you that the left protector is not in the palace. You still dare to come here? Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and cursed in his heart. Li Chang, you little bastard. You are really ruining my plans. He looked at the guard expressionlessly and said stubbornly, My master and the left protector left the sect together to run some errands. They haven't returned yet. I am worried about my master's safety. So what if I come here every day to ask? Where is the left protector? No matter what, I want to see her tonight. Seeing that his attitude was so firm and even a little tough, the guard was stunned for a moment. He then sneered, "Haha. You really don't know what's good for you. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. The left protector is in our sect's forbidden area, the floating mountain. He is discussing important matters with the elders. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. If you have the guts, then go to the forbidden area. When the time comes, the guards guarding the forbidden area will definitely cut you into pieces." Ji Tianxing glanced at him coldly. He didn't say anything else and turned to leave. He didn't return to the Tianji court. Instead, he flew into the sky and rushed to the forbidden area, the floating mountain. Chapter 1281. Ji Tianxing ignored the guards and did not waste any time. He flew straight to the floating mountain. He had read the books in the study before and had some understanding of the floating mountain. It was one of the forbidden grounds of the Heaven Evasion sect. It was located 800 li north of the mountain range, deep within the barrier. According to the books, the floating mountain was naturally formed and had a history of several thousand years. Over 2,000 years ago, when the founding ancestor of the Heaven Evasion sect had chosen this location, the floating mountain had already existed. No one knew why the 1,000-meter-tall mountain was floating in the sky, shrouded by white clouds and thick fog. However, the floating mountain contained a mysterious energy that was extremely beneficial to cultivation. It had always been the place where the Heaven Evasion sect master and enforcers cultivated in seclusion. It was said that there were experts overseeing the floating mountain, as well as many elite experts guarding it. There were also ferocious mutated beasts residing there. The ordinary disciples, deacons, and elders of the sect did not dare to approach the floating mountain, or else they would be severely punished. Ji Tianxing had disguised himself as Ji Wucua's disciple Li Chong, but he did not have the right to set foot on the floating mountain. If he was discovered, he would only be punished. However, he only wanted to save the little black dragon in the shortest amount of time possible. How could he care about anything else? His figure merged into the night and silently tore through the curtain of night, flying as fast as lightning toward the floating mountain. On the way, he passed by a forest several hundred li wide and looked down at the tamed monsters. He silently used a technique to sense the little black dragon's aura, searching for traces of it. Not long after, he crossed the forest and continued to fly toward the floating mountain. What he could be sure of was that the little black dragon was not in that forest. After the left enforcer captured the little black dragon, he has not been in the left palace these past few days and has been hiding in the floating mountain. It seems that the little black dragon is very likely imprisoned in the floating mountain. He silently speculated, the little black dragon definitely won't submit so easily. The Heaven Evasion sect won't be able to tame it that easily. Moreover, it is a divine beast black dragon. The Heaven Evasion sect will definitely not be willing to kill it. He could only be sure that the little black dragon's life was not in danger for now. About a quarter of an hour later, Ji Tianxing flew into the vast mountains. Under the veil of night, numerous mountains that were 3 kilometers tall stood towering in all directions. They were like countless enormous beasts that were waiting to devour a man, and they lay dormant in the darkness. In the center of the dozens of mountain peaks, in the sky, thousands of feet above the ground, floated a 1,000-feet-tall mountain. Even though it was a night with a bright moon and few stars, the area around the mountain was covered with white clouds and fog, shrouding half of the mountain. The mountain was steep, and there were cliffs everywhere, dotted with dark green trees. Ji Tianxing raised his head and looked up. He saw that halfway up the mountain, there were dots of lights, and he could vaguely see people walking around. Several ancient palaces had been built on top of the mountain. They were magnificent and had a domineering aura that could suppress the heavens and the earth. However, it was dark inside the palace, with only a few scattered lights shining weakly. Ji Tianxing retracted his aura and quietly approached the floating mountain, constantly observing the surroundings. He was like a ghost, blending into the night. Even if someone flew past him, they might not be able to detect him. 100 breaths of time later, he arrived at the base of the floating mountain, hiding in the white clouds and fog. He used his soul to investigate and found that the entire floating mountain was protected by an invisible formation. Once an external force came into contact with the formation, it would light up, alarming the guards and experts on the mountain. It really is a forbidden ground of the Heaven Evasion sect. The defenses are so tight. The formation protecting the floating mountain is actually a mid-grade soul-level formation. Ji Tianxing observed for a while and couldn't help but frown. To him, Breaking through a mid-grade soul-level formation was not difficult. The difficult part was not alarming anyone. He slowly flew around the base of the mountain, carefully observing the situation. An hour later, he flew a circle around the floating mountain, clearly observing the situation on the mountain. From the middle of the mountain to the top, there were over 30 sentry posts. Over 100 Sky Origin stage guards were patrolling in a regular pattern. The palace at the top of the mountain seemed to be silent and no one was moving, but there were fluctuations of soul refinement realm cultivators. Ji Tianqing circled to the back of the floating mountain and hid under a hidden cliff. He secretly released his soul to investigate the method to break the defensive formation. Half an hour later, he had a rough idea of how to break the formation, but he was not in a hurry to act. Half an hour later, a group of armored guards with swords flew past him, unhurriedly flying away. When the group of guards disappeared into the night, he immediately released his soul and began to break the defensive formation. Half an hour later, another group of patrolling guards flew over from afar, about to pass above Ji Tianqing's head. At this time, Ji Tianqing successfully broke the formation, breaking a hole in it, and his figure flashed into it. The next moment, the formation closed by itself, and he was already inside the floating mountain. Throughout the entire process, he did not alarm anyone, including the patrolling guards not far away. By the time the patrolling guards flew past this area, Ji Tianqing had already disappeared into the darkness, silently rushing towards the mountain peak. In a short incense stick's worth of time, he had searched the entire mountain peak. The 5 palaces on the mountain peak had several hundred rooms of various sizes. He had used his soul to investigate them all. The result was indisputable. The little black dragon was not on the mountain peak. He hid in the corner of one of the palaces, frowning as he pondered. I just used a secret technique to investigate. The little black dragon's aura is nearby. But it's not on this mountain peak. Could it be inside the floating mountain? When he thought of this, he was about to use an earth movement technique to drill into the mountain and search carefully. But at this time, something strange happened. Whoosh! A dazzling sword light suddenly shot out from the night sky, stabbing straight at Ji Tianqing's head. The blazing white sword light contained vast soul energy and was extraordinarily powerful. Ji Tianqing did not think too much about it. He subconsciously raised his right hand and slapped out. Bang! With a muffled boom, the 1-foot-long soul sword light was pulverized by his slap. His palm was unscathed, but his body found it difficult to endure the massive impact and was forced back 3 steps. Ji Tianqing grimaced, his eyes flashing with cold light. Oh no, I've been discovered. Only now did he recall that in one of the palaces on the mountain peak, a soul refinement realm expert was hibernating in seclusion. When I was searching for the little black dragon, I must have alarmed that soul refinement realm expert. As this thought flashed through his mind, another white light shot out from the night sky. Whoosh! The white light tore through the night sky and instantly landed on a roof 100 feet in front of him. When the white light scattered, a tall and muscular figure appeared. This was a middle-aged man dressed in purple robes, 2 meters tall, and with a dignified face. This person had an extraordinary bearing, his eyes flashing with an intimidating light, and his body exuded a noble and powerful domineering aura. Chapter 1282. The purple-robed man shouted angrily as he stared at Ji Tianqing. You were able to take one of my attacks. You are definitely not a disciple of the house. As he spoke, he released a formless spiritual energy, which swept towards Ji Tianqing like raging waves. In the blink of an eye, the purple-robed man sensed that Ji Tianqing's spiritual energy was in the 5th level of the spirit realm. The purple-robed man's expression changed and he sneered. What kind of coward dares to pretend to be a disciple of the house and sneak into our forbidden area? Ji Tianqing knew that his identity had been exposed and he could no longer pretend. He decided to just stay silent and didn't try to explain himself. He saw this person's face and knew that this person was in the 7th level of the spirit realm. He was certain that this person was the right protector. Without any hesitation, he pulled out his broken sword and attacked the right protector. Whoosh! The moment the broken sword came out, a 20-meter-long ray of white light shot out. It carried with it the power to destroy everything. It pierced through the night sky and arrived before the right protector. The right protector was not prepared for this. Ji Tianqing was so ruthless that he attacked without a word. Plus, this attack was so aggressive, the sword ray was so blinding, and the power was so shocking. His expression changed as he stared angrily. His eyes flashed with shock and surprise. At this critical moment, he had no time to dodge. He could only use his spiritual energy to create a shield to protect himself. Boom! After a muffled explosion, the sword ray broke through the right protector's shield and sent him flying. While he was still in midair, he spat out a mouthful of blood and let out a muffled scream. Boom! The protector of the right crashed into the palace wall 1,000 feet away with a violent force. The thick vermilion palace wall collapsed on the spot, splashing dirt and rocks all over the sky. However, he was a cultivator in the 7th level of the spirit realm after all. In a flash, he charged out from the rubble. Whoosh! In a flash of white light, the right protector flew into the night sky and a dark red sword appeared in his right hand. He looked down at his chest and saw that his purple robe was in tatters. There was a hole in it. Inside the hole, the black soft armor was broken as well, revealing a chopstick-long wound. It was so deep that his bones could be seen. The sword was only 2 inches away from piercing through his heart. The right protector was both shocked and furious. He stared at Ji Tianqing with his eyes wide open and his body was filled with murderous intent. "You damned beast! Who are you? How dare you attack my house? Are you tired of living?" It was obvious that the sky protector of the Eastern Sea ruins for the past 2,000 years had a deep foundation. The right protector was used to living like a prince. He couldn't imagine that someone would dare to sneak into the Heaven Evasion sect and attack him. Because of his carelessness, he was injured by G22 to attack to kill him. His angry roar exploded in the night sky, like rolling thunder, and immediately spread to the peak of the mountain. The guards who were patrolling nearby were immediately alerted and rushed over with its swish sound. Ji Tianqing knew that his identity had been exposed and that there would be a fierce battle tonight, so he decided to go all out and start a massacre. He stared at the right protector expressionlessly. He waved the broken sword in his right hand again and stabbed forward. "Die!" As he uttered these cold words, the broken sword pierced out a cold light that was condensed to the extreme, flashing and disappearing in a flash. The right protector was on high alert as if he was facing a great enemy. However, he couldn't understand this sword technique at all. He could only hold the sword in front of his chest and form a shield again. In the next moment, the cold light that had been condensed to its limits suddenly exploded at his waist. Boom! With a muffled sound, the right protector's lower body exploded into pieces of flesh and blood that flew in all directions. He didn't know what happened at all. He had lost his legs and feet and was only left with the upper half of his body. His face was filled with fear and shock as he fled into the distance in a panic. A dignified expert at the 7th level of the soul refining realm couldn't even block one of Ji Tianqing's moves. Ji Tianqing had only used 2 swords to severely injure the right protector, leaving him with only half his body. What kind of terrifying strength was this? The right protector had never met such a terrifying expert before. Of course he was shocked and angry, overwhelmed with shock. Ji Tianqing subconsciously flew into the night sky and chased after him with the broken sword. But at this moment, a mournful howl could be heard from the hanging mountain beneath his feet. Roar! Ji Tianqing immediately heard it clearly. It was the cry of a dragon. He was not unfamiliar with this sound. He immediately recognized that it was the little black dragon's voice. The little black dragon is really inside the mountain. This thought flashed through his mind. He immediately gave up on chasing the right protector and turned into a golden light, burrowing into the ground and flying into the mountain. After 2 breaths, more than 10 elite guards rushed to the scene in a hurry. They were filled with anxiety as they searched the surroundings. However, Ji Tianqing and the right protector had already left. The scene was empty, only a pile of broken walls and rubble remained. The guards didn't know what was going on. They could only send out warning signals that an assassin had invaded. In the floating mountain, there was a massive cave. The cave was 1,000 meters wide and was oval like an egg. There were traces of man-made excavation on the walls and many pearls and gems were embedded in them. There was also a powerful defensive array. The ceiling of the cave was densely packed with gems, shining with multicolored splendor that illuminated the entire cave. In the center of the cave, there was a circular altar that was 10 feet tall. The altar was 1,000 feet wide and was surrounded by 18 black stone pillars, carved with images of ancient beasts and gods. At this moment, 6 experts in purple robes were standing around the altar. They were waving their palms, sending out beams of light as they used all their strength to unleash magic arts. The mysterious array was activated, and a light shield with a radius of 100 zhang lit up, covering the entire altar. The 18 stone pillars in the surroundings all shone with dazzling multicolored light, releasing streams of flames that were as thick as buckets. More than 60 pillars of flame extended to the center of the altar like chains of flame, firmly binding a black serpent dragon. It was the little black dragon. Its 1,000-meter-long body had shrunk to only 100 meters long. It was in a very miserable state. Its body was covered in wounds and holes. One could clearly see its dragon bones, which were still dripping with dark red blood. More than 60 flaming chains bound its body, neck, tail, and claws. It could only lie on the altar, unable to move at all. The 6 powerhouses activated the formation and unleashed an incomparably violent power that ruthlessly suppressed it, violently destroying its body and soul. It was in so much pain that even a scream was an extravagant hope. Of the 6 experts, the leader was the left protector. He had a sinister smile on his face as he coldly stared at the little black dragon. He shouted, "You evil dragon, do you still think you can escape after coming to our sect? Dream on." Chapter 1283. The left protector's face was ferocious and his body was filled with killing intent. After he finished speaking, another white-haired, purple-robed elder continued to persuade the little black dragon. "Black dragon, you are a divine beast. No matter who you cultivate with, it is for the sake of obtaining great strength. That Ji Tianqing offended our Du Tian sect and will definitely die without a complete corpse. Why are you so stubborn? As long as you are willing to submit and obediently stay in our sect as a divine beast, our sect will provide you with enough resources to allow you to cultivate without worries. Our sect is an ancient sect with thousands of years of history. Our strength is second only to the imperial courts. We are definitely your best backer." This purple-robed elder was the Du Tian sect's grand elder. He had already discussed this with the left protector. One would play the good cop and the other would play the bad cop. Only by playing the good cop and the bad cop would the black dragon submit. However, the little black dragon's attitude was still as stubborn and unyielding as before. Just like before, he coldly glanced at everyone and roared, "We dragons are born noble and will only recognize one master in our lives. We will never change masters. You shameless old bastards, don't even think about making me stay in this filthy place. If you have the guts, then kill me. However, old Ji will kill his way to the Du Tian sect sooner or later, and kill all of you old bastards to avenge me." The left custodian and the 5 elders were infuriated. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent. The left protector was completely enraged and cursed, "You damned evil dragon, you don't know your place. It's been a whole 5 days, and no matter how much we tried to persuade you, you didn't waver at all. Fine, I want to see just how stubborn you are. Don't you want to die? I'll fulfill your wish right now." As he spoke, there was a flash of light in the left protector's right hand and a dark silver magic sword appeared. He held the magic sword in his hand and poured all of his power into the magic sword, forming a blinding white sword light that was 10 feet long. Then, he held the magic sword with both hands and looked like he was going to slash at the little black dragon's neck. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the other 5 elders changed. They revealed anxious expressions and hurriedly sent voice transmissions to dissuade him. "Left protector, please don't be rash. This is not an ordinary flood dragon, but a legendary divine dragon. Left guardian, the sect leader has given a death order. No matter what, we have to subdue this divine dragon. Please don't be foolish. If we can obtain this dragon, our Heaven Ascension sect will be able to dominate the world in the future and make all the imperial courts bow before us." The left protector was so angry that she lost her mind for a moment. After being persuaded by the elders, he immediately calmed down, and the killing intent in his heart instantly dissipated. But the little black dragon was still glaring at him. The magic sword in his hand froze in midair. He didn't know whether to put it down or take it back. It was rather awkward. The little black dragon's eyes were filled with disdain as it said in a mocking tone, "Left protector, I knew you were a coward. Kill me if you have the guts. Unfortunately, you don't have the guts. You're just an old tortoise, a coward." The left protector flew into a rage. His entire body emitted a murderous aura as he shouted in a muffled voice, You evil creature, I will definitely kill you today." As he spoke, he raised the magic sword in his hand again and viciously slashed at the black dragon's neck. His patience had already been exhausted in the past few days. He had been thoroughly enraged by the little black dragon. Even if the elders tried to dissuade him, it was useless. He only wanted to kill the black dragon with a single slash to vent his anger. The blazing white sword descended from the sky and slashed at the black dragon's neck. It was about to behead it. The 5 elders present were unable to stop it in time. They could only watch as the black dragon's head was separated from its body. At this critical moment, a muffled bang suddenly came from the rock layer at the top of the cave. A scorching white sword light, which was also 10 zhong long, shot out from the rock stratum with the power to destroy the world. It slashed towards the altar like a shooting star. In the next moment, the 2 blazing white swords collided in the air, erupting with a muffled bang. Boom! A deafening explosion violently reverberated through the cave, causing the entire cave to tremble. The violent chi wave, wrapped in the blazing white light fragments, burst out in all directions, immediately causing the few elders to retreat 10 steps back. Having narrowly escaped death, the little black dragon immediately raised its head to look at the ceiling. The left protector and the 5 elders were also alarmed by this sudden turn of events. They glared at the ceiling with furious eyes. A young man in a white robe came out of the rock layer at the top of the cave and flew to the top of the altar with a whoosh. His face was cold as he wielded a broken sword. Without a word, he swung his sword at the stone pillars around the altar, severing the flame chains. When the left protector and the elders clearly saw the white-robed man's appearance, they immediately paled in fright and confusion. This kid. Isn't he Elder Ji's disciple, Li Chong? Li Chong, what are you doing? Have you gone mad? That's not right. Why would Li Chong barge into the hanging mountain? How could he have the qualifications and strength? No. This guy is a soul-tempering expert. He's definitely not Li Chong. After a few words of discussion, they immediately realized that something was wrong and immediately came to their senses. He's not Li Chong, quickly kill him. The left protector was the most furious. After roaring, he swung his sword at Ji Tianxing. The other 5 elders also took out their weapons and slashed out sword and saber lights that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, besieging Ji Tianxing. At this time, Ji Tianxing had already shattered several stone pillars and severed more than 20 flame chains. Seeing that everyone was surrounding him, he hurriedly took out 5 soul magic swords and launched a counterattack. He used the soul-severing sword technique and controlled the 5 soul magic swords to fly around the altar, forming a huge net of white light. The attacks of the left protector and the 5 elders were all blocked by the net of white light, unable to harm him or the little black dragon in the slightest. Boom, 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 boom. A series of muffled explosions reverberated through the cave, causing the entire hanging mountain to shake. The berserk energy, mixed with fragments of light of different colors, exploded in all directions, turning the entire cave into a state of chaos. The scene was in complete chaos. The earth-shaking commotion alarmed everyone on the hanging mountain. The left protector and the 5 elders angrily and anxiously roared as they attacked Ji Tianxing with all their strength. Ji Tianxing used this opportunity to sever several dozen flame chains and rescue the little black dragon. Although the little black dragon did not recognize his appearance, it could sense the presence of his soul. It immediately asked in pleasant surprise, "Old Ji? Is it you? Did you really come to save me?" Ji Tianxing nodded at it and said in a low voice, "Little black dragon, your injuries are too heavy. Go into the sword world and heal. Leave the rest to me." Chapter 1284. The little black dragon entered the world within the sword with a whoosh and entered peaceful Earth City to heal. Ji Tianxing was left alone in the cave. He stood proudly on the altar, facing the attacks of the left protector and the 5 elders. Without the little black dragon holding him back, he had nothing to fear. He wielded the broken sword, the burial of heaven, and began a massacre. "Draw your sword." He brazenly pulled out the burial of heaven and slashed out a blazing white sword light at an elder on the left. The blazing white sword light shattered the saber light and sword images in the sky before striking that elder and sending him flying. This elder was at the 4th tier of the soul refinement realm, but under Ji Tianxing's sword, he was so weak that he couldn't even take a single blow. His magic power shield was instantly shattered and his abdomen was severed by the sword light. His body was instantly cleaved in 2. As he flew back, the 2 halves of his body wildly vomited blood and he let out a shrill howl. When the other elders saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded, their hearts beating wildly. The left protector was both shocked and furious. He madly roared, "Just who is this bastard? Kill him. Everyone, work together and kill him. The other 4 elders didn't dare to hesitate. They hurriedly used all their strength to surround Ji Tianqing, using their trump cards. Multicolored saber light and sword light, dazzling white pillars of spiritual energy, and all sorts of strange secret techniques converged into a flood that drowned out Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing was fearless. He controlled the 5 spiritual energy swords to form a sword net that protected his body. No matter how the 4 elders attacked him, their attacks couldn't break through the sword net. They couldn't harm him in the slightest. Now that he was at the 5th tier of the soul refinement realm and had condensed 5 spiritual energy swords, he could use them as a foundation to form a sword array and use all sorts of mysterious killing moves. The 4 elders were weak. Even if they went all out, they couldn't do anything to him. Instead, he took advantage of the 4 elders' fierce attacks to counterattack with the broken sword. Stab! Dang! Seizing an opportunity, while the great elder was unprepared, he ruthlessly stabbed out with his sword. A cold light burst out from the blade and disappeared in an instant. The 4 elders didn't notice this, nor did they guard against what kind of sword technique this was. But in the next moment, this extremely condensed cold light pierced through the first elder's chest and exploded inside his body. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the great elder's body exploded on the spot, turning into pieces of flesh and blood that shot out in all directions. The 2 elders who were closest to him were caught off guard and were splashed with blood and flesh. They looked extremely miserable. This sudden scene scared the elders silly. Their faces were full of horror. The fighting spirit in their hearts melted like snow. They hurriedly shouted and retreated, fleeing out of the cave. This guy is too strong. We're no match for him. There's a strong enemy invading our sect. Quickly, ask the protector of the right and the sect leader to come and help. Everyone, don't attack by force. Lure him out of the forbidden area and then join forces to encircle him. The 3 elders who were not injured fled out of the cave in a panic. Their speed was unbelievably fast. The 2 elders whose bodies were destroyed also desperately fled. Their divine souls turned into a ray of white light and flew out of the cave as fast as lightning. Ji Tianqing certainly would not let them go. His figure flashed and he chased after them. Bastard! Watch out for my sword! He roared with murderous intent. His left hand formed a spell, controlling 3 divine soul magic swords, and slashed at the 3 elders. He held the broken sword in his right hand and slashed out a ray of sword light with all his strength towards the divine soul of the great elder. With a muffled bang bang bang, the elders were hit one after another. The 3 elders who were in good health were all hit by the divine soul magic swords. They fell to the ground with blood spurting out from their bodies. They rolled and screamed in pain. The ray of sword light from the broken sword hit the great elder's divine soul and cut it into several pieces. Ji Tianqing grabbed the pieces of divine soul with his big hand and gave them to the burial of heaven as trophies. However, just as Ji Tianqing was chasing after the elders, there was a sudden change in the cave. The left guardian did not make a move, nor did he take the opportunity to escape. He was hiding in the dark and took advantage of Ji Tianqing's unpreparedness to launch a sudden attack without warning. Little bastard, die! He silently lurked behind Ji Tianqing. When he was about 10 feet away from Ji Tianqing, he attacked like lightning. With a roar, he burst out with 100% of his power and slashed out 9 rays of dazzling white sword light in the shape of a dragon. 9 dragons fighting heaven. The 9 rays of sword light crisscrossed like 9 divine dragons flying back and forth. They exploded with destructive power and fiercely blasted towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was caught off guard and was drowned on the spot. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the dazzling white light burst out and filled the entire cave. The raging shockwave, wrapped in endless light shards and broken stones, burst out in all directions and fiercely bombarded the walls of the cave. Boom! The loud noise did not stop, and the entire floating mountain shook violently. The huge altar in the cave and the surrounding black stone pillars were all blown to pieces and turned into broken stones on the ground. Huge cracks appeared on the walls of the cave as well. Countless huge rocks and mud fell down with a rumbling sound, filling up more than half of the cave. The outside of the floating mountain was cracked and densely packed with cracks. It was disintegrating at a speed visible to the naked eye. Such an earth-shattering commotion stunned everyone. Ji Tianqing's body was after all a Sky Origin stage martial artist's body. How could it withstand such a horrifying attack? When the 9-dragon sky-conquering sword light hit him, his body immediately exploded and turned into dust that filled the sky. However, his spiritual soul was intact. He instantly got into the broken sword and returned to his body. At the same time, the few elders who were running for their lives all stopped and turned around to look at the cave behind them. Even though the cave was in chaos and rocks were flying everywhere, they still clearly saw the scene of the left protector chopping Ji Tianqing into pieces with her sword. The few elders were suddenly spirited. They were relieved and cheered excitedly. Ha ha ha, that's great. The left guardian is indeed powerful. He killed that bastard with one slash. At the critical moment, the left guardian's sword art was superb. He killed the enemy with one slash. The elders all flattered the left guardian. The left guardian was also very proud. He smiled proudly. Elders, you are flattering me. That bastard pretended to be a disciple of our sect and launched a surprise attack. That was why he could take advantage of us. Now that I have seen through his scheme, of course I will kill him with lightning speed. As the saying goes, evil cannot prevail over good. How can such a despicable person do anything to our Sky Origin sect? The left guardian acted righteously. The elders all began to praise and flatter him. However, just as everyone was flattering each other, a mocking sneer suddenly sounded in the cave. Chapter 1285. This sudden sneer reverberated in the cave and was particularly ear-piercing. The left custodian and the elders were stunned on the spot. They immediately searched their surroundings in astonishment. The floating mountain was still shaking. The cave was cracked and the ceiling kept collapsing. Boulders and soil kept falling. The entire cave was filled with dust and broken rocks, making it impossible to see what was going on inside. However, a handsome young man in a white robe appeared out of thin air from the rubble in the cave. This man was 8 feet tall. He had sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. His face was handsome and his eyes were as vast as the stars. He exuded a transcendent aura that looked down on the world. He was powerful, honorable, and mysterious. He stood proudly in the sky above the ruins. His body was wrapped in a layer of faint golden light. He held a pitch-black broken sword in his right hand. Boulders and soil kept falling from the ceiling, but they could not hurt him at all. They automatically bounced off his head. An invisible pressure of the divine soul enveloped the entire cave. There was an extremely sharp sword will in his body. It was as if it wanted to break through the floating mountain and tear the sky apart. The left guardian and several elders stared at him. Their eyes widened in horror. They looked as if they had seen a ghost. Who is this guy? He is not Li Chang. Li Chang's body has been destroyed by the left guardian. I know. He is that thief. He is the one who has taken over Li Chang's body. Could this be his real body? Damn it. How can he be so powerful? After a few words of discussion filled with fear, the crowd immediately guessed the truth. In the next moment, the elders' complexions changed dramatically. They turned around and flew out of the cave in a panic. They fled desperately. Oh no, everyone run. The left guardian is powerful. Let him take care of this place. We are not running away. We are just going to report and find reinforcements. Go and inform the right guardian and the sect leader. This guy is not someone we can deal with. As the elders fled, they didn't forget to shout loudly to cover up their escape. Ji Tianqing ignored the frightened elders and stared at the left protector with lightning-like eyes. The corners of his mouth curled into a sinister sneer. Left protector, your time of death has come. The pain you inflicted on the little black dragon, I will definitely return it double. As his voice fell, he waved the broken sword in his hand and slashed out a blazing white sword light. Draw your sword. It was the same sword technique, and it was the same blazing white sword light that was 30 meters long. However, the difference was that Ji Tianqing's spirit had returned to his main body. Using his main body to execute the ultimate sword technique, his power had increased explosively by nearly 8 times. Shua! The dazzling sword light instantly cut through a distance of 1,000 feet and arrived in front of the left protector. The left protector's eyes widened. Deep fear and shock appeared in his pupils as he subconsciously dodged. However, boom! With a muffled sound, the left protector was struck by the sword light. Blood spurted out from his body as he was sent flying. He rolled and smashed into the cave wall 100 meters away, causing a few wide cracks to appear on the cave wall. When he landed on the ground, he discovered that his left shoulder had been completely severed. His entire left arm was gone. The extreme pain caused his face to pale and his body to break out in a cold sweat. The pain caused his body to twitch. Damn it! Just who is this brat? How can he have such terrifying strength? The left protector could not believe this. He was a 7th-layer soul refinement expert. How could he not even be able to withstand a single strike from his opponent and have his arm severed? In his shock, he lost all will to fight. Without hesitation, he turned and fled from the cave. Humph, still want to run? In your dreams. Ji Tianqing coldly snorted. He waved the broken sword in his right hand and viciously stabbed out. Whoosh! A cold light illuminated the sky. A sword light condensed to the limit instantly pierced through the turbid air and stabbed into the left protector's back. Then that cold light blossomed and exploded. Bang! In the earth-shattering explosion, a dazzling white light exploded like a mushroom cloud and filled the entire cave. The destructive power not only blasted the left protector's body into pieces, but it also blasted his soul into pieces, which scattered in all directions. The floating mountain, which was already full of cracks, could no longer withstand such a destructive blow and immediately collapsed. With a series of cracking sounds, the thousands of feet tall floating mountain cracked in all directions and completely shattered into dozens of pieces. Endless amounts of boulders and dirt flew in the night sky and fell to the ground. The power of the mysterious array could no longer support the collapse of the floating mountain. The floating mountain also collapsed. Rumble! After a series of explosions that shook the sky, the floating mountain collapsed into rubble and debris. It crashed into the mountains and piled up into a 1,000-meter-tall mound. The splendid palace on the mountain peak, as well as the many hidden secret passages, caves, and secret vaults in the mountain, were all destroyed. After a full 100 breaths of time, the ashes and dust that covered the sky slowly dissipated. The night sky regained its clarity and the light dimmed. The floating mountain, which had thousands of years of history, had collapsed and disappeared. The loss of the Du Tian sect was immeasurable. Whoosh! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing flew out from the ruins, stepping on the void and ascending into the sky. He held his sword and stood proudly in the night sky. His eyes were sharp like swords as he scanned his surroundings. After one look, he immediately frowned and his lips curled into a cold smile. It turned out that the earth-shattering commotion just now had alarmed the entire Du Tian sect. The dozen or so experts of the Heaven Ascension sect, as well as the injured elders who had fled, were all standing in the night sky, glaring at him like tigers watching their prey. Every powerhouse's expression and eyes were filled with hatred and anger. Their bodies were filled with murderous intent and were about to ignite into flames. The powerhouse closest to him was a middle-aged man with white hair. He had a beard that reached his chest. This person wore a golden robe and an octagonal dragon crown on his head. A broad golden sword that symbolized the aura of a king hung from his waist. His entire body emitted an earth-shattering aura. Ji Tianqing, of course, could guess that this person was the leader of these powerhouses, the Du Tian sect's current leader, Lu Feiyu. His title was the Sword Emperor of the Eastern Sea. Not far away in the night sky, the dozen or so powerhouses spread out and formed an encirclement. Among these people, there was the protector of the right who only had half of his body left, a few elders who were riddled with wounds, and 8 attendants who had reached the spirit refining realm. A total of 12 spirit refining realm powerhouses surrounded Ji Tianqing in the most ferocious manner. They wanted nothing more than to cut him into pieces and grind his bones to dust. However, his expression did not change. His eyes were filled with unparalleled confidence as he muttered to himself. A secluded sect in the sea has more than a dozen spirit refining realm powerhouses. The left and right protectors are all in the 7th level of the spirit refining realm, and the current leader is in the 9th level of the spirit refining realm. Such a powerful force can only be compared to the imperial court. No wonder the Du Tian sect is so arrogant. Chapter 1286. Ji Tianqing's voice was not loud, but all the experts present heard him clearly. The elders and deacons were all furious as they glared at him with fire in their eyes. If their gazes were like knives, he would have been sliced to pieces by everyone's gazes. Sect leader Lu Feiyu glared at him and said coldly, "Who are you? We have no enmity with you. Why have you barged into our sect and started a massacre?" After all, Lu Feiyu was the sword monarch of Dong Hai. He was only second to primordial soul sovereigns. Even though he was filled with murderous intent and wanted to kill Ji Tianqing with one strike, he was still a sect leader. Of course, He had to say a few words to show the Wantian sect's might. Most importantly, he had to figure out Ji Tianqing's identity and background. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile as he said mockingly, Lu Feiyu, the left guardian, third elder, and Ji Wucua followed your orders and went to the Central Plains to find me. Didn't you want to kill me to avenge Murong Zheng? Didn't you steal my black dragon and want to be the Wantian sect's guardian beast? Now that I've come to the Wantian sect to seek justice, you don't recognize me? What a joke. Hearing what he said, Lu Feiyu, the elders, and deacons all came to a realization. Their expressions became angrier and angrier. So it's you, Ji Tianqing. Lu Feiyu furrowed his brows as a chilling light flashed in his eyes. A formless spiritual energy was released from his body, and it pressed down on Ji Tianqing like an avalanche. Ji Tianqing also released his spiritual energy to block Lu Feiyu's spiritual energy. The two forces were in a stalemate. Ji Tianqing was not at a disadvantage and his expression did not change. The elders and deacons were all spirit-refining realm cultivators. Of course, everyone could tell that Lu Feiyu and Ji Tianqing were fighting in secret. The two of them were in a stalemate and it was hard to tell who was the winner. Seeing this scene, everyone was filled with shock. They only felt that it was inconceivable, and they discussed secretly through voice transmission. This kid is Ji Tianqing? The guy who destroyed the Duanmu family and went against Murong Zheng? This brat is actually able to withstand the sect master's divine soul pressure. This is simply unbelievable. 50 years ago, an old man who lived in seclusion in the Eastern Sea came to challenge the headmaster. That old man was at the 7th level of the spirit refinement realm and was filled with confidence. But sect master didn't even draw his sword. He didn't even use a single move. He only used the pressure of his divine sense to make that person spit out blood, retreat 5 steps, and flee with his tail between his legs. Ji Tianqing just killed the left protector, and now he's able to resist the sect master's soul pressure. Could it be that he's also at the 8th or 9th level of the soul refining realm? Isn't this too outrageous? He looks to be in his early 20s. How could he have reached the 8th level of the soul refinement realm? This kid's strength and talent have both reached an extremely terrifying level. He's a great enemy of our sect. Just as everyone was discussing, Lu Feiyu said coldly, Ji Tianqing, since you already know of our sect's foundation and power, you should know the consequences of making an enemy of our sect. No matter what your background is or what status you have in Middle State, it's useless in the Eastern Sea's returning ruins. Tonight, I will definitely kill you and use your head and blood to comfort the left protector's soul in heaven. As she spoke, Lu Feiyu held the scabbard in her left hand and the hilt in her right hand. She slowly drew the golden broadsword at her waist. This was a broadsword that was 4 feet long and as wide as a palm. It was dark gold in color, and there were 2 golden dragons carved on the hilt and scabbard. They were lifelike and lifelike. Clang! The moment the sword was unsheathed, the crisp sound of the sword rang out. An extremely sharp aura spread out, as if it was going to tear the night sky apart. Ji Tianqing stared at the golden sword and frowned slightly. He sneered and said, 9th level of the soul refinement realm strength and a superior grade soul class treasure sword. As expected of the Eastern Sea sword monarch. However, you want to kill me with just this bit of strength and means? Wishful thinking. Lu Feiyu was not angered by him. She said coldly, you're young but you talk big. I'll show you what the sword monarch's wrath is like. As her voice fell, she waved the golden sword in her right hand and slashed out 8 dazzling white sword beams, enveloping Ji Tianqing's figure. Sword shaking the heavenly river. Swish! 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 The white sword beams lit up the dark night sky and sealed off a radius of 10,000 feet. It was like a sword prison, suppressing Ji Tianqing. He could not escape, so he could only resist. However, the power of each sword beam was extremely terrifying, reaching the peak of the soul refinement realm. The 8 sword beams slashed at the same time, enough to destroy the cities and mountains within a radius of 100 miles. Ji Tianqing did not panic in the face of danger. He calmly took out 5 soul magic swords, which danced around his body and formed a huge white sword net. The 8 white sword beams, with the power to destroy heaven and earth, crashed into the sword net, creating a series of muffled bangs. Suddenly, an invisible sound wave spread in the night sky, spreading for hundreds of miles. The huge sword beam shattered, turning into billions of white fragments, sprinkling in the night sky like a fairy scattering flowers. The night sky within a radius of 100 miles was reflected in a snow-white light. Violent waves of air rushed in all directions, blowing the elders and deacons pale. They all took a few steps back to offset the impact. Everyone stared at the scene in the night sky with wide eyes, waiting for the result of Ji Tianqing being killed in one move. Is that kid dead? The power of the sect leader's sword can shake heaven and earth and shatter the stars. That kid must be dead. Although that kid can withstand the sect leader's soul suppression, he can't withstand the sword shaking the heavenly river. Even if he doesn't die, he will be severely injured. Several elders and deacons were whispering to each other, swearing that Ji Tianqing would die without a doubt. However, Lu Feiyu's expression became more and more serious. He did not look relaxed at all. When the elders saw his reaction, they had a bad premonition. Sure enough, within the dazzling fragments of light, a handsome and valiant figure appeared, and a cold laugh was heard. Sword Emperor of East Sea? You're just You don't deserve your reputation. As soon as he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing held the black broken sword and slashed at Lu Feiyu with all his strength. Eat my sword. As soon as the broken sword was drawn, a cold light bloomed, tearing the night sky apart. A 30-meter-long white sword beam, carrying with it the power to destroy everything, arrived in front of Lu Feiyu in an instant. At that moment, the snow-white sword light illuminated Lu Feiyu's fine details, allowing everyone to clearly see his solemn expression and astonished eyes. Obviously, not only had Ji Tianqing blocked his ultimate sword technique, but he had also performed an even more powerful sword technique, which had shocked him greatly. At the critical moment, Lu Feiyu held the golden sword in his hand horizontally, blooming with golden light, forming a golden light wall in front of him. Boom! The white sword beam hit the golden light wall hard, exploding with a thunderous sound. The golden light wall instantly collapsed into pieces. Chapter 1287. Seeing Lu Feiyu being pushed back, the powerhouses all revealed looks of shock. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at this scene in disbelief. They couldn't help but cry out in shock. Oh my god! This kid's sword technique is so powerful. Even the headmaster couldn't block it and was pushed back 3 steps. Could it be that this kid is stronger than the headmaster? Impossible! Our eyes must be playing tricks on us. How can a young man in his 20s be stronger than the headmaster? He's only in his 20s and has the strength of a cultivator in the 9th level of the spirit realm. Did this kid start cultivating in his mother's womb? Lu Feiyu was the headmaster of the Du Tian sect and was known as the Sword Emperor of the Eastern Sea. He was the most powerful cultivator in the Du Tian sect and everyone's spiritual leader. Now, not only was he unable to suppress Ji Tianqing, he was pushed back 3 steps by Ji Tianqing. How could everyone not be shocked? Lu Feiyu's face instantly darkened. He glared at Ji Tianqing with a sharp gaze and shouted angrily, Ji Tianqing, you do have some strength. No wonder you are so arrogant and dare to behave atrociously in our sect. However, you underestimate my strength too much. Just now, I was just testing my moves. As he spoke, he formed a sword technique with his left hand and waved his dark gold broadsword with his right hand. He displayed a sword technique. Sword breaks the universe. Lu Feiyu let out a low growl and waved the sword in his hand. Instantly, 9 dazzling sword lights shot out like 9 golden dragons towards Ji Tianqing. At this moment, his expression was solemn and majestic. His robe fluttered without any wind and his entire body emitted sword intent. It was so powerful that it made people's hearts palpitate. The Sword Emperor of the Eastern Sea's strength and confidence were on full display at this moment. The 9 golden dragon-like rays of sword light seemed to have a life of their own. They exploded with extreme power and roared towards Ji Tianqing, wanting to tear him to pieces. Each ray of sword light was 1,000 meters long. Under the combined attack of the 9 rays of sword light, it was powerful enough to destroy the heavens and earth. Almost no one under the primordial spirit realm could block this attack. This was Lu Feiyu's most powerful killing move when he unleashed his full power and became one with his sword. Lu Feiyun was confident that Ji Tianqing would not be able to block this sword technique. Even if he did not die, he would be severely injured. However, Ji Tianqing was not afraid at all. His expression was still calm and composed. Just as the 9 golden sword projections were about to strike him, golden light flashed behind his back, and a pair of massive golden wings appeared out of thin air. Wings of the Golden Rock. He let out a low growl and instantly closed his wings to protect himself. Pang pang pang. The 9 golden dragon sword auras all slammed into the golden wings, creating a deafening boom that shook the heavens and earth. Ji Tianqing, who was wrapped in the golden wings, flew out without any suspense. He tumbled in the night sky and fell 10 miles away. The fragments of the sword light were wrapped up by the violent shockwaves and spread out in all directions, covering a radius of 100 miles. More than a dozen mountains within 100 miles were blasted apart and collapsed on the spot, turning into ruins and mud. The ground shook violently as if there was a super earthquake. Dense cracks appeared on the ground. All the elders and deacons were overjoyed and cheered excitedly. All hail the sect leader. He killed a powerful enemy with one sword and showed the might of our sect. I said earlier that no matter how strong that kid is, he is no match for the sect leader. In the entire world, only the primordial soul stage cultivators can fight the sect leader. However, just as everyone was cheering excitedly and praising Lu Feiyu, a golden light suddenly lit up in the night sky. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing, who had been blasted away, actually opened his golden wings and flew back in a golden ray of light. There was not a single wound on his body. His expression was calm as usual. He was safe and sound. In the blink of an eye, he flew back into the night sky. He stared at Lu Feiyu and shouted coldly, "Lu Feiyu, this is all you have. How can you be worthy of the title of Sword Emperor? What a joke!" With that, he controlled the 5 soul spell swords and launched a counterattack. Soul Slash! The 5 soul spell swords expanded in the wind and turned into giant white swords that were 10 feet long. They shot through the night sky like meteors and shot towards Lu Feiyu. Lu Feiyu's figure was immediately drowned out. The night sky within 10 miles became a world of white light. It was so bright that everyone could not open their eyes. Boom, boom, boom. A deafening explosion rang through the sky and alerted the sky-defying sect that was 800 miles away. The extremely bright soul spell swords lit up half the sky, making this area seem like it was daytime. Within the dazzling white light, Lu Feiyu was hit by the soul spell swords again and again. His body trembled as he was sent flying with a pale face. Only after he retreated 10 miles away did he manage to reduce the powerful impact. He finally stabilized his footing and stopped in the night sky. Before he could say anything, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked down and saw that his purple robe was in tatters. There were a dozen holes in it, revealing the armor underneath. If it weren't for the high-grade soul-level armor protecting him, he would have been pierced a few times. Lu Feiyu, who was so smart and domineering just a moment ago, was now in such a sorry state. He was even slightly injured. He was shocked and angry. His eyes were dyed with a layer of red and his body was burning with anger. Ji Tianqing, you damned animal, I will make sure your head is separated from your body and you die without a burial place. Following Lu Feiyu's voice, all the elders and attendants looked at him in shock. When the crowd saw his appearance clearly, they all revealed deep fear in their eyes and exclaimed in disbelief. How is this possible? The headmaster is injured? What kind of monster is that kid? How can he have such terrifying strength? Even the headmaster is no match for him. I have lived for hundreds of years and I have never heard of such a genius. This Ji Tianqing must be the #1 monster in the world. Just as all the powerhouses were shocked and dumbfounded, Lu Feiyu glanced at them angrily and scolded. What are you waiting for? Are you watching a show? Only then did all the powerhouses react. The right guardian quickly raised his arms and shouted, Everyone, no matter how strong that bastard is, let's join forces to kill him. We will definitely eradicate him. The other elders hurriedly chimed in and shouted righteously. The time for the honor of our sect has come. In order to avenge the left guardian and protect the 1,000-year foundation of our sect, let's join forces and kill that bastard here. As they shouted, more than a dozen powerhouses spread out, waving their swords and magic treasures. They used all kinds of secret skills to besiege Ji Tianqing. Lu Feiyu took the lead and rushed to Ji Tianqing. He used his secret swordsmanship and forced Ji Tianqing to retreat. More than a dozen powerhouses besieged Ji Tianqing from all directions. They released a sky full of sword shadows and magic light, which drowned Ji Tianqing's figure. Chapter 1288. To Ji Tianqing, Lu Feiyu was the biggest threat. The other dozen or so powerhouses were weaker, but he still had to be careful and not be careless. He used his golden wings to protect his body and condensed a golden mana shield to protect himself. The attacks of the elders and deacons landed on him one after another, but they were all blocked by the golden wings and the mana shield. But Lu Feiyu's attack could not be ignored. He had to block it with all his strength. Flying Rainbow Sword Feather Blade. Lu Feiyu waved his golden sword and slashed out 360 golden sword light blades. They covered Ji Tianqing like feathers falling from the sky. Ji Tianqing hurriedly waved his broken sword and slashed out 36 scorching white sword light, sealing off all directions. Bam bam bam. The sword light clashed violently in the night sky, exploding with muffled sounds and splashing light fragments everywhere. Lu Feiyu's attack was neutralized, but Ji Tianqing was knocked back 100 meters. Taking advantage of this opportunity, an elder lurked behind him and suddenly attacked. That elder held two swords and used all his strength to stab at Ji Tianqing's back. Cold light flashed on the blades, releasing an indestructible aura. Ji Tianqing sensed that something was wrong. He turned around and saw that the two swords were already in front of him, about to pierce through his mana shield. At this critical moment, he did not have time to counterattack. He opened the third eye on his forehead and released violent lightning. Kaboom! Following an earth-shattering boom, a blue lightning beam as thick as a water bucket struck that elder. That elder was caught off guard and was immediately enveloped by the lightning. His physical body was turned into charcoal, and he screamed in pain as he flew backward. As he flew backward, his charred body turned into countless pieces and dust, drifting in the night sky. His soul also fell into a state of dizziness, paralyzed by the lightning and unable to move. Ji Tianqing waved his broken sword and slashed out a cold light. It cut the white light of divine soul into pieces and killed the elder on the spot. When the experts saw this, they were filled with shock. Their eyes were filled with fear as they retreated. Lu Feiyu was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He shouted angrily and slashed with his sword. Thunderous sword! The speed of his sword was extremely fast, like an aurora piercing through the sky. Its power was also as strong as lightning, capable of destroying heaven and earth. Boom! In an instant, Ji Tianqing was struck by Lei Ting's sword, and he was sent tumbling away. His magic power shield was shattered on the spot, turning into fragments of golden light that scattered everywhere. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the elders and deacons immediately cast spells to besiege him, showering him with sword shadows and saber lights. Pang pang pang! Ji Tianqing was submerged in the light of the spells. He suffered the bombardment of all kinds of secret spells, and a series of muffled sounds rang out as his body trembled. When the elders and deacons saw this scene, their spirits were lifted, and their faces were filled with anticipation and excitement. That's great! He's finally injured. Everyone, let's attack together. We can't give him a chance to breathe. Take advantage of his illness and kill him. We must cut him into pieces to dispel the hatred in our hearts. However, when everyone was excited and wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to attack fiercely, a scene that stunned them appeared. In the light of the spells that filled the sky, Ji Tianqing stepped out and rushed back safe and sound. He was surrounded by all kinds of saber lights, sword shadows, flames, hurricanes, and other spells. When these spells collided with his body, they were all shaken away by him, not leaving a single trace behind. He didn't have the protection of a magic power shield, but he relied on his physical body to ignore everyone's attacks. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed that it was true. Ji Tianqing's physical defense was so strong that he could resist everyone's spells head-on without being injured at all. Oh my god, what kind of monster is this guy? His physical body is so strong? It's comparable to a soul-level upper-grade magic treasure? He's too monstrous. If we don't get rid of him, he'll definitely be a great threat to our sect. The elders and deacons all revealed shocked expressions and retreated one after another. They attacked with all their might, but they couldn't even hurt Ji Tianqing. This was a devastating blow to their confidence. Ji Tianqing flew all the way, controlling the 5 soul-slaying swords, and using the soul-slaying swords, he attacked everyone fiercely. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 5 soul-slaying swords lit up with a dazzling white light and transformed into thousands of white sword shadows, enveloping more than a dozen powerhouses and launching a fierce stabbing and strangling. With the continuous bang 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 of muffled sounds, more than a dozen powerhouses were killed and scattered, fleeing in all directions in a sorry state. 5 colored lights burst out from the crowd. Blood splashed everywhere, and broken limbs flew out one after another. Screams of terror, howls of pain, and shouts of anger mixed together and spread out continuously. The enraged Ji Tianqing was like a prehistoric beast, charging into the crowd and starting a massacre, killing all the elders and deacons until they were thrown off their feet. His strength was unstoppable. Lu Feiyu was also inexplicably shocked. Seeing such a shocking scene, his heartbeat accelerated several times. His angry face was distorted, and his eyes were stained with dark red blood. He rushed toward Ji Tianqing with murderous intent, holding the golden sword with both hands and slashing down fiercely. Flying Dragon Slash. Damned beast, go to hell! A giant sword that was hundreds of feet long, like a dazzling golden dragon, with the power to destroy everything, suddenly slashed toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was in the midst of killing in the crowd when he suddenly felt a terrible pressure coming. His face suddenly changed, and he turned to look at the sky. There was no doubt that this was the sword that Lu Feiyu had used all his strength, and it was extremely powerful. Even with his physical defenses, it was quite impossible for him to block the attack unscathed. At this critical moment, he did not hesitate to use his trump card and attack Lu Feiyu head-on. Sky-splitting sword. He held the broken sword with both hands, held his breath, and burst out with 100% of his strength, fiercely slashing out a giant golden sword that was hundreds of feet long. This was the sword that he condensed his essence, qi and spirit, and it was also the strongest sword of oneness of heaven and man and sword. The two giant sword lights collided in an instant, and there was a loud boom. The deafening loud sound and the violent impact spread out in all directions, and instantly covered a radius of hundreds of miles. Those elders and deacons who had suffered heavy casualties were thrown out on the spot, and they fell on the ruins and the ground with blood all over their bodies. The two sword lights collapsed at the same time, exploding into light fragments that filled the sky, and the ground and the mountains below were full of holes and pits. Ji Tianqing and Lu Feiyu were sent flying at the same time, and their faces were pale as they gasped for breath. In this competition of skills, neither of them had the upper hand. Ji Tianqing was not surprised. Instead, he was a little gratified and secretly happy. I didn't think that with my strength of the 5th level soul refinement realm, I would be able to tie with Lu Feiyu, who is at the 9th level soul refinement realm. Chapter 1289. Lu Feiyu glared at Ji Tianqing with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. Flames of fury surged all over his body. Half of the dozen elders and deacons had been killed by Ji Tianqing. The remaining 6 powerhouses were also covered in blood and were severely injured. They had long been scared out of their wits. Even if they stayed to fight, it would be useless. They could not hurt Ji Tianqing at all. When he thought of this, Lu Feiyu unleashed 9 blazing white spiritual Dharma eyes and sent them flying in all directions. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the 9 spiritual Dharma eyes landed in the surrounding night sky and lit up with white light that soared into the sky. A huge white sky curtain appeared and covered an area of 60 miles, trapping him and Ji Tianqing within. This was Lu Feiyu's spiritual domain. As for the injured elders and deacons, they had already fled the battlefield and rushed to the sect 800 miles away to report the news. Within the spiritual domain, Lu Feiyu stepped into the night sky and stared at Ji Tianqing expressionlessly. His eyes were dark red, as if he was possessed. His robe was ragged and his hair was disheveled. There was still a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked somewhat pathetic. However, his injuries were not serious, and his combat power was still intact. A terrifying power was still brewing in his body. Within the domain of a few dozen miles, only he and Ji Tianqing were left. He stared at Ji Tianqing and said in a cold and indifferent tone, "Ji Tianqing, I have to admit that you are the youngest and most monstrous genius I have ever seen. With your talent and strength, you can certainly look down on the entire Tianxian continent. You may even become a primordial soul supreme soon." Ji Tianqing also stopped attacking temporarily. He stood still in the night sky 1,000 feet away from him and confronted him with his sword. After hearing Lu Feiyu's words, his lips curled into a playful smile. He said, "I will definitely become a primordial soul supreme. You don't have to judge me. On the other hand, you, the sword monarch of East Sea, do not live up to your name. How disappointing. In terms of attainments in the sword Dao, you're even inferior to me." Ji Tianqing's words were like a sharp knife that pierced Lu Feiyu's heart, making him feel extremely humiliated and angry. However, to Ji Tianqing's surprise, Lu Feiyu did not retaliate in anger. He actually swallowed his anger and said in a deep voice with an expressionless face, Ji Tianqing, now that things have come to this, it won't be good for either of us if we continue to fight. Our sect has been passed down for more than 2,000 years. Naturally, it is not as simple as it looks. We have trump cards and killer moves that you would not expect. You are known as the #1 genius of the continent. It would be a pity if you were to die here. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and looked at him playfully. He asked, Lu Feiyu, what do you mean? Could it be that you want to make peace? No, I'm not asking for peace. Lu Feiyu shook his head and said in a dignified and low voice, we are discussing a solution that is beneficial to everyone. Hee hee. Interesting. Ji Tianqing smiled and said playfully, then tell me, how can it be beneficial to everyone? Lu Feiyu said proudly, you have no enmity with our sect. It's all because of Murong Zheng. However, from today onwards, our sect will not interfere in the grudge between you and Murong Zheng. I can let you live and let you leave our sect alive. However, you must leave the Black Dragon behind as compensation for the lives of our sect's protectors, elders and deacons. Ji Tianqing laughed and said in a playful tone, hee hee, Murong Zheng is your disciple. Those protectors, elders and deacons are your subordinates. You can ignore their lives but you only want to exchange for the Black Dragon. You are indeed a sect leader. You only think about the big picture. Even a fool could hear the sarcasm in his words. Lu Feiyu's expression did not change as if he did not understand. He said calmly, Ji Tianqing, you should know that I am not the strongest person in our sect. No matter how strong you are, you can only fight to a draw with me. If I am determined to kill you, you will not be able to leave this place alive. Your life or that Black Dragon. Choose one of the two. You decide. Ji Tianqing sneered contemptuously, robbers are indeed robbers. You can still speak so eloquently as if you are giving alms to others. Lu Feiyu, your shamelessness is truly admirable. Hearing this, Lu Feiyu frowned and stared at him coldly. He asked, so you don't agree? Of course. Ji Tianqing said without hesitation, the Black Dragon is my pet. Why should I give it to you? As for the death of those protectors, elders and deacons, they only have themselves to blame. You are the same. If you know what is good for you and get out of the way, you can still save your little life. If you dare to stop me, I will make sure you die here and your soul scatter. Ji Tianqing's tone was cold and his attitude was very tough. His whole body exuded an incomparable domineering aura. Lu Feiyu's face was livid with anger. His eyes were surging with cold murderous intent. He shouted in a deep voice, Ji Tianqing, since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, don't blame me for being impolite. I will cut you into 8 pieces, extract your divine soul, and refine it into a puppet. Together with your Black Dragon, you will be my sect's watchdog. When his voice fell, he made a gesture with both hands and performed a secret technique. He controlled the divine soul realm and launched a fierce attack on Ji Tianqing. Life-stealing soul-breaking sword formation. Following his angry shout, 3,600 rays of dark golden sword light appeared in the blazing white light curtain within a radius of 60 miles. Each ray of sword light was 30 feet long. More than 3,000 rays of sword light flew from all directions, carrying a vast amount of divine soul power. They pierced towards Ji Tianqing like a rain of arrows. Swoosh, swoosh. In a split second, the night sky was covered by the golden sword light. Ji Tianqing's figure was also drowned in it. Lu Feiyu stood high in the sky and used all his strength to control the sword formation to strangle Ji Tianqing. He even shouted with a ferocious face, damn little bastard, do you really think I will let you go? Even if you hand over the Black Dragon, I will still turn you into ashes. Our sect has been dominating the East Sea for 3,000 years. Other than the imperial courts, we have never been afraid of any powerhouses. You dare to break into our sect and start a massacre. Even if I kill you 10 times, it will not be enough to vent my hatred. In the midst of the 3,600 golden swords, Ji Tianqing was folding his wings to protect himself. No matter how hard those golden swords tried to pierce his wings, they could not do any harm to him, even though loud bangs could be heard when they landed on his wings. However, the power of the 3,000 golden swords was endless. As long as the divine soul realm was not broken, the golden swords would always exist. He was besieged by the golden swords in the sky for about 100 breaths. He stopped defending and started to use his secret technique to launch a counterattack. God-slaying spear. He suddenly raised his left palm, and the golden mark on the back of his hand released a terrifying mysterious flame that gushed out from the center of his palm. Swoosh! Chapter 1290. Lu Feiyu didn't think that Ji Tianqing would still have the strength to fight back when he was surrounded by the soul-severing sword array. When the god-slaying spear made of flames pierced through the thousands of sword lights and arrived before him, his expression changed and he revealed a look of shock. The power of the god-slaying spear was far beyond his imagination and filled his heart with fear. Is this really a technique that a soul-refining realm cultivator can use? At that moment, this thought flashed through his mind and a sense of fear rose from the depths of his soul. But he was worthy of being a sect leader and a ninth-layer soul-refining realm cultivator. Even in the face of death, he didn't panic. Without hesitation, he took out a golden disc and poured his spiritual energy into it. The disc expanded to 3 feet wide and blocked in front of him. This was an ancient-looking disc with ancient patterns and characters carved on it. The edges were damaged and worn. This object was clearly an antique with thousands of years of history, and it exuded an incomparably heavy aura. This was one of the treasures of the Du Tian sect, a top-quality soul artifact passed down from the ancient era, the 7 Profound Heavenly Disc. More than 2,000 years ago, the founder of the Du Tian sect used this 7 Profound Heavenly Disc to defeat many powerful cultivators in the East Sea. He captured many powerful demons and made a name for himself. This was a treasure that was second only to a divine artifact. It could suppress the fate of a sect and protect billions of people. In the hands of a powerhouse like Lu Feiyu, this 7 Profound Heavenly Disc could change the layout of mountains and rivers and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It had the power to control heaven and earth and communicate with the sun, moon, and stars. But that was under normal circumstances. Lu Feiyu had to spend a lot of spiritual energy and years to set up an array to achieve this effect. At this moment, he was already at a critical moment of life and death, so he was unable to utilize any of its profound effects. He could only use the 7 Profound Heavenly Disc to block in front of him, and hope that this treasure's strong defense could stop the god-slaying spear. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the god-slaying spear hit the 7 Profound Heavenly Disc. At that moment, golden light filled the sky and illuminated the entire soul domain. It was dazzling and bright. The unparalleled impact caused the simple and crude 7 Profound Heavenly Plate to shatter into pieces. The deicide spear also collapsed and shattered, turning into a sky-reaching scarlet flame that surged like a giant wave, spreading out in all directions. Violent shockwaves mixed with the golden fragments of the Tian Pan spread out in all directions, hitting the soul realm with a series of whooshing sounds. Lu Feiyu's divine soul domain was immediately bombarded until it was on the verge of collapse. Cracks also appeared on the blinding white light curtain, which was making cracking noises. Lu Feiyu's spiritual domain was on the verge of shattering, and her spiritual soul was also severely injured. Her face immediately turned pale, and a stream of blood spurted out of her mouth. My 7 Profound Heavenly Plate was actually defeated. Lu Feiyu widened her eyes in shock. She looked at the fragments in the sky in disbelief and was dumbfounded. He simply could not believe that Ji Tianqing was only at the 5th level of the soul refinement realm and could actually shatter a top-grade soul artifact, the 7 Profound Heavenly Plate, in one move. This was simply a miracle. Lu Feiyu's confidence also collapsed along with the 7 Profound Heavenly Plate. He even started to suspect whether this white-robed youth in front of him was an Essence Soul Supreme in disguise. If not an Essence Soul Supreme powerhouse, who could break a top-grade soul artifact in one move? At this time, Ji Tianqing had already come back to his senses. He rushed out of the golden light and flames that filled the sky. Holding the broken sword with both hands, he fiercely slashed out 9,000 feet long sword lights, hacking at the surrounding blinding white light curtain. Bang! 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 A series of muffled sounds exploded. The blinding white light curtain that covered the sky was on the verge of collapse, and the cracks widened further. Lu Feiyu was shocked and furious. He could only forcefully endure his injuries, suppress the shock and disbelief in his heart, and hurriedly cast a spell to stabilize his divine soul domain. The reason why he used his divine soul domain to trap Ji Tianqing, and even pretended to seek peace with Ji Tianqing, was to stall for time. After all, the Grand Elder had always been in closed-door cultivation and had not shown his face for decades. He had to buy enough time for the elders and deacons to knock on the Grand Elder's door and awaken him. Seeing that his divine soul domain was about to shatter, how could he not be anxious? "Little bastard, don't even think about escaping," Lu Feiyu roared. He did not hesitate to sacrifice 20 years of cultivation to release monstrous dermic powers into his divine soul domain. His 9 divine soul Dharma eyes also spun rapidly, dazzling like small suns, quickly repairing his divine soul domain. Ji Tianqing had already seen through his intentions. Seeing that the cracks in his divine soul domain were quickly repairing, he immediately sneered with a sinister expression. "Lu Feiyu, you want to trap me with just you? Wishful thinking." As he said that, he held the broken sword with both hands and used all his dermic powers to stab at the white light barrier beside him. He deeply understood the principle that it was better to attack more forcefully than to destroy one side. The broken sword released a cold light that was condensed to the extreme, instantly piercing through the sky and smashing into the barrier in the distance. Bam! With a deafening explosion, the cold light suddenly bloomed and instantly turned into a huge ball of blazing white light, as dazzling as the sun. The white light barrier was blown into a hole with a radius of thousands of feet. The dark night sky outside the domain could be clearly seen. Earth-shattering sound waves, violent and terrifying shock waves, and countless fragments of white light were wantonly splashing in the night sky. Cracks began to appear all around the hole, and they quickly began to spread. The divine soul domain could not withstand it any longer and completely collapsed. Bam! Another muffled explosion sounded. The blazing white light barrier that covered an area of 60 miles shattered into white light fragments and scattered in the night sky, quickly dissipating. Lu Feiyu's divine soul suffered a backlash. Suddenly, his body shook violently and blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. His body was as stiff as a rock. He fell straight from the night sky and smashed into the ground with a plop. The battle was temporarily over. The white light, sound waves, and hurricanes that filled the night sky howled for a long time before dissipating. 10 breaths later, when the night sky gradually became clear again, Ji Tianqing's figure appeared. He appeared in the night sky safe and sound, stepping on the void, holding the broken sword in his hand and looking down at the earth below with sharp eyes. The ground within 100 miles had long been turned into ruins, full of cracks and big pits. Lu Feiyu was in a big pit, struggling to get out of the pile of dirt. He used his qi to shake off the dust on his body and stood up shakily. His clothes were ragged, his hair was disheveled, and his face and chest were stained with blood. He looked very miserable. Seeing him like this, Ji Tianqing shouted expressionlessly in a low voice, "Sword Emperor of Donghai, a loser. You have disgraced the name of the Sword Emperor." Dang! After that, he rushed down from the sky toward Lu Feiyu and slashed down with his sword. But at this moment, in the night sky 10 miles away, a bright golden light suddenly lit up, like a meteor streaking across the night sky, speeding over. Before the golden light arrived, a thunderous roar exploded above Ji Tianqing's head. Chapter 1291. The sudden roar was like thunder, shocking everyone's hearts. With Ji Tianqing as the center, everything within 1,000 feet radius was suppressed by an invisible spiritual energy, like a cage. His charging speed immediately slowed down, as if he was in a quagmire. He could only struggle with all his might. The invisible spiritual energy was so powerful that it made it difficult for him to breathe. His face was a bit pale, and he could not use his fa smoothly. Such a powerful spiritual energy, such a powerful spiritual energy. It's not any weaker than the imperial tutors. Could it be that this person is the most powerful person in the Heaven sect, the great elder known as Ancestor Sanju? Ji Tianqing turned his head to look at the night sky not far away. He stared at the golden light as this thought flashed through his mind. His expression and eyes became very serious, as if he was facing a great enemy. He guessed the identity of this person, but he did not think that this person's strength would be on par with the imperial tutors. While he was struggling to move, Lu Feiyu, who was in the deep pit, had already flown into the night sky and escaped far away. Ji Tianqing could only give up on chasing him. He held the broken sword in his hand and stared coldly at the person who came. In the next moment, the golden light pierced through the night sky and arrived before him. Whoosh! The golden light dimmed, revealing the figure of a tall and sturdy elder. He stood 1,000 feet away from Ji Tianqing. This elder wore a gray robe, and his hair was tied up in a bun with a wooden hairpin. A hemp rope was tied around his waist, and he wore a pair of black cloth shoes with white soles. At first glance, this gray-robed elder looked like an ordinary mortal. His clothes were very simple and did not look very eye-catching. However, upon closer inspection, one would find that although the elder's hair and beard were all white, his face was ruddy, and his skin was as clear as jade. His face did not look old at all. His eyes were as bright as the stars, and his pupils were as vast as the night sky. Images of the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers appeared in his eyes. The elder's aura was also otherworldly, as if he was above all living things and did not belong to this world. Ji Tianqing knew very well that the elder's strength and experience had already reached a state where his heart was as still as water. This was a true expert, the most terrifying opponent, unfathomable. At the same time, he could confirm his previous guess. This old man was the Grand Elder of the Heaven Evasion sect, Old Ancestor San Ju. According to the Heaven Evasion sect's historical records, the Grand Elder had 3 absolute arts, and they were all his proudest absolute arts. The first was a sword technique, unrivaled in the Eastern Sea. No one could rival it, and a single sword could break through 10,000 techniques. The second was formations. He had inherited the legacy of the Heaven Evasion sect's founder. Once anyone below the primordial soul realm was trapped in his formations, no one would be able to break through. The third absolute was calligraphy. It was a masterpiece that he had studied for more than 800 years. He wanted to find the great Tao in calligraphy, communicate with the principles of the world, and find an opportunity to break through to the primordial soul realm. It was because of this that the Grand Elder's reputation as one of the 3 absolutes shook the Eastern Sea. Because he had lived for nearly 2,000 years, his seniority and reputation were extremely high, and he had the qualifications to become an ancestor of a sect. That was why he was called Ancestor 3 Absolutes. It was said that even the Golden Dragon Emperor of the Imperial Court of the Water Tribe had high praise for him. Ji Tianqing and Ancestor 3 Absolutes stood in the night sky, facing each other from 1,000 feet away. Neither of them spoke first. Lu Feiyu, who was covered in wounds, saw Ancestor 3 Absolutes arrive, but it was as if he had seen his savior. He quickly flew over. He stopped beside Ancestor 3 Absolutes and quickly wiped away the blood on his face. He bowed respectfully and said, "Disciple greets martial uncle." Ancestor 3 Absolutes didn't even look at him. His eyes were still staring at Ji Tianqing. He asked in a deep voice, "Lu Feiyu, what's going on?" "I've been in seclusion for 46 years, studying the heaven scripture. I was about to find the opportunity to enter the primordial soul realm, but you sent someone to knock on my door in the middle of the night, ruining my plans." Lu Feiyu was filled with fear. He quickly explained, "Martial uncle, this person's name is Ji Tianqing. He has a grudge with Murong Zhang, so he disguised himself as a disciple of our sect and snuck into our sect, starting a massacre. This person destroyed our sect's forbidden grounds, floating mountain, and killed the left and right protectors, as well as many elders and deacons. I'm useless. I couldn't stop him even after using all my strength. I even had to trouble martial uncle. I'm truly ashamed." Ancestor 3 Absolutes raised his eyebrows. A hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. This person is only in his early 20s. Even if he started cultivating when he was in his mother's womb, he's only cultivated for 20 years. How can he have such strength that even you couldn't stop him, and were even injured by him? Lu Feiyu had expected him to have such a reaction. He quickly explained, "Martial uncle, don't be fooled by this person's appearance. Although he's only at the 5th level of the spirit refinement realm, his attainments in the way of the sword are slightly better than mine. He also has many powerful trump cards. It's said that this person is the #1 genius of the Tianxian continent. His talent is rarely seen since ancient times." Ancestor 3 Absolutes was even more shocked. He sized up Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. His lips curled into a cold smile as he said in a playful tone, "I've studied a puppet sutra before. I've grasped more than 30 secret techniques to refine puppets, but I've never come across a perfect puppet material. Since this person is so monstrous, I'll kill him and use him as a material to refine a heaven-patrolling sword puppet. He'll definitely become a loyal guard of our sect." After saying that, Ancestor 3 Absolutes revealed a cold smile. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Lu Feiyu nodded in agreement and added, "Martial uncle, this person also has a black dragon. I've already seen it. It's not an ordinary dragon. It seems to be a legendary divine dragon. What? A divine black dragon? Ancestor 3 Absolute's eyes widened. His eyes were filled with shock. He found it unbelievable. In the past 10,000 years, there hasn't been a divine dragon in this world. How can he have a black dragon? No wonder he's the #1 genius of the continent. To have such a great opportunity, he's the envy of others. However, since you dared to barge into our sect, you're courting death. Your opportunity belongs to our sect. As he spoke, Ancestor 3 Absolute's body emitted a murderous aura. A hurricane started to blow in the night sky. Lu Feiyu, back off a little and help me maintain the formation. Watch how I kill this kid. Ancestor 3 Absolutes waved his sleeves. Golden light surged out of his body and 9 divine spirit Dharma eyes appeared. The strange thing was that the 9 divine spirit Dharma eyes were half white and half gold. They emitted a dazzling golden light. The 9 divine spirit Dharma eyes gathered together to form a ring, revealing a hazy image. Although the image was still very blurry, one could roughly tell that it was a giant python or a dark golden dragon. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing's expression changed again. He revealed an extremely serious expression. He's indeed a half-step Essence Soul Realm expert. He's only a step away from stepping into the Essence Soul Realm and condensing a Essence Soul Dharma idol. From that hazy image, once this old fellow breaks through to the Essence Soul Realm, the Essence Soul Dharma idol that he condenses will definitely be related to dragons and snakes. Chapter 1292. The 3 dazzling golden sword lights were all 30 meters long and contained a supreme power that could destroy the world. Swish, swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, the 3 sword lights pierced through the night sky and arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. Each sword light locked onto his soul aura. Even if he flew into the sky or went into the ground, he would not be able to dodge. He could only choose to block or dissolve them. At that moment, he was pincered by the 3 sword lights. His nerves were tense and he felt a chill from the depths of his soul. It was as if he saw death approaching. At the moment of life and death, he only had time to swing his broken sword and slash out a 300-meter-long sword light with all his strength. Bang! Amidst the deafening noise, the huge blazing white sword light blocked the 2 golden swords and exploded with an earth-shattering bang. The night sky was illuminated by the golden and white light. It was as brilliant as day. The huge white sword and the 2 golden swords collapsed at the same time, exploding into fragments that scattered in all directions. However, there was still 1 golden sword light that could not be blocked. It stabbed Ji Tianqing with a bang. Ji Tianqing was sent flying away on the spot, tumbling 10 miles away. However, the robe he was wearing was shattered into pieces and scattered into the night sky. However, he was completely unscathed. There were no wounds or bloodstains. There was only a fist-sized dent on his chest that had turned red. This kind of injury was nothing to him. It was negligible. When he flew 10 miles away and fell from the sky, he finally got rid of the terrifying impact and steadied himself. He returned to the night sky and stared at Forefather Sanju from 10 miles away. He did not speak, but he was shocked and gratified. He thought to himself, the galaxy body refinement art is indeed amazing. My body has been refined to the limit of the soul refinement realm by the divine fire of sun and moon. My defense is actually so strong. If it was Lu Feiyu who took this attack, there would definitely be a bloody hole in her chest. 10 miles away, Lu Feiyu and Forefather Sanju were dumbfounded. Both of them widened their eyes in shock and disbelief. Lu Feiyu was filled with anticipation. He thought that the patriarch would definitely be able to kill Ji Tianqing in 1 strike. However, he was simply unable to accept this result. It was simply too surreal. This is impossible. That brat had clearly been struck by the sword, so how could he not die? Was he a human or a demon? Why was his physical defense so strong? Could it be that he has a divine artifact protecting him? Lu Feiyu could not figure it out, so she assumed that Ji Tianqing had a divine artifact protecting him. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to be safe and sound. Old Ancestor Sanju's eyesight was far sharper than Lu Feiyu's. He sized up Ji Tianqing with a few glances and saw through the clues. This kid's skin, flesh, blood, and bones are all glowing gold and silver like the radiance of the sun and moon. Could it be that his body has been tempered by the flames of the sun and moon? This was impossible. Only primordial soul supremes can withstand the fire of sun and moon. Martial artists below the primordial soul realm will definitely be burned to ashes by the fire of sun and moon, their souls dispersing. Pausing for a moment, Ancestor Sanju calmed down, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Humph, as expected of the #1 genius of the continent, a rare demon in the world. Not only is his talent extremely strong, even his physical body has been tempered to perfection. This is just what I want. After refining him into a puppet, he will be invincible. As he spoke, he activated his 9 godly soul Dharma eyes, releasing a dazzling golden light that condensed into a golden dragon that charged towards Ji Tianqing. This kid's physical defense is strong, but I don't believe that his godly soul is also so strong. There was no doubt that the golden dragon condensed from godly soul energy was an ultimate move that specialized in killing godly souls. Old Ancestor Sanju was very confident that as long as Ji Tianqing was hit by the golden dragon, his godly soul would definitely shatter on the spot. At that time, Ji Tianqing would be completely dead, but his perfect body would be preserved, which would be perfect for him to refine into a puppet. Swish! The golden dragon carried a blazing golden flame and instantly pierced through the night sky, charging towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's expression changed immediately, as if he was facing a great enemy. Of course, he knew that the golden dragon was going to destroy his godly soul. However, his godly soul had not been tempered, so it was only equivalent to LV8 of the soul refining realm, which was one of his weaknesses. Once he was hit by the golden dragon, his godly soul would definitely shatter and he would die on the spot. At the critical moment, he immediately thought of the heaven-patching orb. Subconsciously, he activated the heaven-patching orb and released a vast white light to protect his godly soul golden sword. Boom! In the next moment, the golden dragon arrived and fiercely hit Ji Tianqing, causing an earth-shattering explosion. He was immediately blasted away, flying 10 miles in the night sky and smashing into the ruins of the ground. A deep pit with a radius of 100 meters was created on the ground. The violent impact spread out, spreading the surrounding area of the deep pit and causing dust to fly everywhere. However, after a short breath, Ji Tianqing flew out of the deep pit. He was still unscathed, and his eyes were clear and bright. There was no dizziness or blurred state at all. Obviously, the golden dragon did not cause any damage to his godly soul. It did not even shake it. When Ji Tianqing flew up into the night sky again, Ancestor Sanju and Lu Feiyu were completely dumbfounded. Both of them were peerless powerhouses, but they looked as if they had seen a ghost. They were extremely shocked and their eyeballs were about to pop out. Oh my god! Could it be that this guy couldn't be killed? How can he not die? Does he have an immortal body? Lu Feiyu roared in a hoarse voice, completely losing the demeanor of a sect leader. Ancestor Sanju was also shocked and angry. He clenched his fists tightly and his face was ashen. Damn bastard, even his godly soul has been tempered to the extreme? That's impossible. He must have some kind of divine artifact to protect his godly soul from harm. Ancestor Sanju did not want to believe in miracles. He only believed in his own judgment and speculation. He firmly believed that there was a reason for any unbelievable miracle. After Ji Tianqing flew up into the night sky, he turned around and flew away without hesitation, escaping towards the exit hundreds of miles away. He had already seen Ancestor Sanju's terrifying strength, so of course he would not continue to tremble. If he did not escape now, he would not be able to escape tonight even if he had wings. He would definitely die here. Although Ancestor Sanju was the same as Lu Feiyu, an expert at the 9th level of the soul refinement realm, there was a difference of thousands of years between them. However, there was a difference of over 1,000 years between the two of them. One of them had just stepped into the 9th level of the soul tempering realm, while the other was a half step into the primordial soul realm. Ji Tianqing used all his strength and all his trump cards, but could only fight to a draw with Lu Feiyu. It was difficult for him to win. Now, Ancestor Sanju was personally attacking. The power of each move was destructive and was several times stronger than Lu Feiyu's. Ji Tianqing could rely on his invincible physical defense and the protection of the heaven-mending pearl to block Ancestor Sanju's killing moves twice in a row. However, he was very clear that Ancestor Sanju definitely had many trump cards that he had not used yet. Chapter 1293. I'm only at the 5th level of the soul refinement realm after all. Being able to fight Lu Feiyu to a standstill is already shocking enough. Unfortunately, I'm still too young to face an old monster like Forefather Sanju who has lived for 2,000 years. Ji Tianqing sighed as he sped through the night towards the exit of the Heaven Ascension sect. Sometimes, running away was not shameful. Especially when he had barged into the Heaven Ascension sect alone. Not only had he saved the little black dragon, but he had also killed the left protector, third elder, and Ji Wutsua who had kidnapped the little black dragon, as well as many elders and deacons. He had even taught the arrogant sect master Lu Feiyu a lesson and stepped on the sword monarch of the East Sea. This was already a feat that shocked the world and was unimaginable to billions of cultivators. Against an old monster like Forefather Sanju who was half a step into the primordial soul realm, it was only natural that he could not defeat him. Run with all his might. As long as he could safely escape from the Heaven Ascension sect, he would have profited greatly. After I cultivate for 2 more years, if I can reach the 8th or 9th level of the soul refinement realm, I'll be able to crush Forefather Sanju when I meet him again. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself as he made up his mind. He stepped on a blazing white soul spell sword and shot through the night sky like a streak of light, rushing towards the exit 800 miles away. 20 miles behind him, Forefather Sanju and Lu Feiyu were furiously chasing after him with all their might. In the night sky ahead of him, there were still specks of light and the true essence of many cultivators. When he was fighting with Lu Feiyu, the people of the Heaven Ascension sect had been alerted. When he was fighting with Forefather Sanju, over 100 Heaven Origin Realm experts flew through the sky and rushed towards the battlefield. At this moment, the Sky Origin stage cultivators saw a white light flashing across the night sky. They were running away as fast as lightning. They all started to shout and shout. Stop him. Don't let him escape. The enemy has already been heavily injured by the Grand Elder. We must stop him. As long as we can delay him for a while, the sect master and Grand Elder will come and kill him. This person destroyed our sect's forbidden grounds and killed many elders and deacons. He is unforgivable and must die. Shouts broke the silence of the night sky. Countless cultivators were filled with righteous indignation, their voices filled with passion and passion. Perhaps it was the presence of Lu Feiyu and old ancestor Sanju that made them feel more courageous and valiant. They even forgot the difference in strength between them and Ji Tianqing. Therefore, they all brandished the swords in their hands and activated their magical artifacts with all their might, releasing a sky full of sword and saber radiance, which rained down on Ji Tianqing like a storm. Ji Tianqing turned a deaf ear to him and simply ignored him. Swish! He was like a shooting star, instantly passing through the sky full of attacks and flying far away without any injuries. Those Sky Origin stage cultivators couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes. Moreover, even if some of the saber light and sword shadows hit him, they would not be able to break through his physical defense. Not even a single strand of hair would be lost. Of course, there were also a few ignorant white-robed disciples who stood in front of Ji Tianqing without any regard for their own safety. Ji Tianqing did not hesitate at all, nor did he show any mercy. He charged straight into them. Bang! 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 With a series of muffled sounds, the dazzling white sword light pierced through the bodies of the white-robed disciples like a stick of candied hawthorn. Their bodies instantly exploded, turning into a pile of minced meat and a rain of blood that fell into the night sky. Unknowingly, 100 seconds passed. Ji Tianqing finally flew over 800 miles. He crossed the mountain range of the Heaven Vanishing sect and rushed to the exit. At the end of the vast and flat grassland stood a huge array. There were 9 tall stone pillars around the array, all of which gave off a dense white light. As long as he activated the array and stepped through the portal of light, he would be able to leave the Heaven Vanishing sect and return to the Eastern Sea's returning ruins. Ji Tianqing focused and rushed to the side of the array. He was about to cast a spell to activate the array. However, just as he cast 5 pillars of light and completed the first step of activating the array, Ancestor Sanju arrived first. He also stood on a huge golden sword and flew into the sky above the grassland like a streak of light. However, the golden sword beneath his feet was condensed from vast amounts of magic power. It was different from Ji Tianqing's soul spell sword and could not be compared. He looked down at Ji Tianqing from above and growled with a dark expression. Kid, I really can't believe that your flying speed is even faster than mine. However, you will definitely die tonight. I definitely won't let you escape alive. Don't even think about running away. Dang. With that, Ancestor Sanju waved his hand and sent 4 golden swords towards Ji Tianqing. Swish! 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 The 4 30-meter-long golden swords formed a sword array and exploded with devastating power as they descended from Ji Tianqing's head. Sword array of the 4 symbols. Kill. The sword array enveloped an area of 300 meters. Not only did it want to kill Ji Tianqing, it even enveloped the teleportation array. Ancestor Sanju's goal was very clear. In order to kill Ji Tianqing, he would not hesitate to destroy the teleportation array. He was a formation grandmaster anyway, so it would be easy for him to rebuild and repair the teleportation array. However, Ji Tianqing could not allow the array to be destroyed. He immediately flew into the sky and took the initiative to meet the 4 swords. The 4 swords immediately changed directions and shot towards him. Just as the swords were about to hit him, he suddenly closed his golden wings. Wings of the golden rock. Bang, 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 bang. With a deafening explosion, he was struck by the 4 swords and fell from the sky onto the grassland. 100-meter-deep pit was formed on the ground. Mud flew everywhere and the entire grassland shook violently. The 4 giant swords also collapsed, exploding into a sky full of golden light fragments, bursting out in all directions. Ancestor Sanju frowned and looked towards the bottom of the pit to check on Ji Tianqing's situation. At this moment, Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to fly out of the pit and charge towards Ancestor Sanju. He raised his left hand and released an ultimate skill. God-killing spear. He had already used the God-killing spear 15 minutes ago and used up 30% of his divine flames. Now, in order to escape, he no longer had any scruples. He released 50% of his divine flames and formed a flaming spear, stabbing it towards Ancestor Sanju. When the God-killing spear flew out, the divine flame mark on the back of his hand immediately dimmed and became blurry and transparent. Without a doubt, the divine flame mark's power was almost used up and could not be used again in a short period of time. The God-killing spear that had been condensed with 50% of his divine power was also extremely powerful. It was his final trump card. Boom! Ancestor Sanju did not have time to dodge and was hit by the God-killing spear. Amidst a deafening boom, old Ancestor 3 Absolutes was sent flying backwards. A bloody hole was blasted open in his abdomen, causing blood to spurt out. Chapter 1294. Ji Tianqing used the God-slaying spear to send old Ancestor Sanju flying. However, he did not chase after him. Instead, he immediately turned around and continued to break the teleportation formation. He knew that although the God-slaying spear was powerful, it could not cause fatal damage to old Ancestor Sanju. For an expert at old Ancestor Sanju's level, even if his arms and legs were cut off, it would not affect him much, let alone a bloody hole in his stomach. This kind of injury was only a little troublesome for old Ancestor Sanju. It could only delay him for a while. Ji Tianqing used every second to cast a spell and quickly activated the teleportation formation. The 9 jade dragon pillars around the formation lit up one by one, giving off a dense glow. At this moment, Lu Feiyu arrived near the formation. Before he could see Ji Tianqing's movements, he saw old Ancestor Sanju being sent flying. He fell from the sky, covered in blood, and landed on the ground. Lu Feiyu was stunned on the spot. She widened her eyes in horror and let out a worried cry. Grand Elder! As he called out, he anxiously flew to the ground and helped the bloodied old Ancestor Sanju up. Grand Elder, how are you? Are your injuries serious? Lu Feiyu was extremely worried. He was very worried about one thing. If old Ancestor Sanju was heavily injured by Ji Tianqing and couldn't fight anymore, then Ji Tianqing would go on a killing spree within the sect. No one would be able to stop him if he wantonly slaughtered the disciples of the sect. That would be a disaster and humiliation for the Heaven Evasion sect. Old Ancestor Sanju's face was ghastly pale. Blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth and his eyes were slightly dazed. The God-slaying spear was too powerful. It did not only cause him a bloody hole in his stomach, but also shook his soul. He climbed out of the hole with Lu Feiyu's help. He circulated his cultivation to shake off the dust on his body. Only then did he gradually regain his senses. Feiyu, that brat wants to escape. Go stop him. We can't let him escape. Old Ancestor Sanju circulated his cultivation to suppress his injuries and heal the bloody hole in his waist as he anxiously ordered Lu Feiyu. Lu Feiyu was stunned. Instinctively, she wanted to defend herself. He had already fought with Ji Tianqing. Not only did he not gain the upper hand, But he was also injured by Ji Tianqing. His face was covered in dust, and he looked particularly miserable. Even old ancestor Sanju was heavily injured and fell to the ground covered in blood. How could he be a match for Ji Tianqing? However, Lu Feiyu subconsciously looked at the teleportation portal and glanced at Ji Tianqing. When he saw that Ji Tianqing had already activated half of the teleportation array and that 7 of the 9 jade pillars had already lit up, he was immediately filled with anger. Bastard! You're still thinking of running away? In your dreams! Lu Feiyu shouted angrily. He no longer cared about the danger and rushed to the teleportation formation. He waved his sword and slashed out a dozen sword lights toward Ji Tianqing. He didn't hope to injure Ji Tianqing. He only hoped that he could stall Ji Tianqing so that he couldn't escape. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 16 blazing soul swords with unparalleled power descended from the sky toward Ji Tianqing. They instantly drowned out his figure. Ji Tianqing was busy activating the teleportation portal and completely ignored Lu Feiyu's attacks. When the sword lights slashed toward him, he continued to activate the teleportation portal without looking back. He only spread the golden wings on his back to protect himself. Bang bang bang. The sword lights slashed the golden wings one after another, creating a series of muffled sounds. The sword lights all collapsed and shattered, turning into countless fragments of white light that scattered in all directions. Ji Tianqing's body was also shaken by the impact. His feet sank deep into the ground. However, he didn't care about his own safety and hurriedly activated the teleportation portal. A moment later, the 9th stone pillar around the portal finally lit up. Instantly, the 9 stone pillars lit up with a dazzling white light that shot into the center of the portal, forming a door of light that was more than 3 meters tall. The array was fully activated, and the teleportation door finally appeared. Ji Tianqing jumped without hesitation and turned into a streak of white light that flew toward the portal. "Don't even think about escaping, you scoundrel!" Lu Feiyu yelled at the top of his lungs. He immediately raised his broad golden sword and was about to use his ultimate sword technique to kill Ji Tianqing. However, he knew that he didn't have enough time. By the time the sword lights he released reached the portal, Ji Tianqing would have already stepped through the portal and escaped from the Heaven Ascension sect. At this moment, Forefather 3 Extremes had already suppressed his injuries and temporarily healed the bloody hole in his abdomen. His figure flashed past Lu Feiyu and pounced toward the teleportation door as fast as lightning. Whoosh! In the next instant, the portal flashed with white light and Ji Tianqing's figure disappeared. Forefather 3 Extremes followed closely behind. After passing through the portal, his figure also disappeared. Lu Feiyu was stunned for a moment and turned to look at the night sky behind him. Not far away in the night sky, several elders and deacons were rushing over to help without any regard for their own safety. Seeing this, Lu Feiyu shouted to everyone, "Elders, stay behind and guard the sect. Don't let anyone sneak into the sect and cause trouble. I will join forces with the Grand Elder and chase after that brat. We will tear him to pieces and burn his bones to ashes." After giving these instructions, Lu Feiyu turned around and flew into the teleportation gate, chasing after Yi Chen. Whoosh! Inside the Heaven Ascension sect, the Big Dipper star formation flashed with white light and a figure appeared out of thin air. The first person to charge out of the portal was naturally Ji Tianqing. He wore a white robe and held a pitch-black broken sword in his hand. After flying out of the portal, he flew into the distance like a streak of light. The 9 white-robed guards guarding the portal were not prepared for someone to suddenly charge out. When they discovered that someone had charged out and were about to give chase, Ji Tianqing had already flown into the sky and was flying into the distance at an unbelievable speed. In just 2 short breaths, he had left the mountain where the Heaven Ascension sect's entrance was and entered the vast sea of clouds. Then, another figure in a gray robe rushed out of the teleportation array. The guards around the formation did not recognize Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes. After all, Forefather 3 Extremes had been in seclusion for more than 40 years and had not shown his face. However, these guards could vaguely guess his identity from his appearance and aura. The white-robed guards were stunned for a moment and immediately knelt down to greet him with an extremely respectful attitude. Forefather 3 Extremes did not even look at them. His figure flashed and flew into the sky, chasing after Ji Tianqing. When the guards saw Forefather 3 Extremes' figure disappear into the sea of clouds, they all let out a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. After all, Old Ancestor Sanju was furious, and his entire body was emitting a powerful spiritual pressure that made their hearts tremble, and they couldn't even breathe. However, just as the white-robed guards stood up, A third figure rushed out of the teleportation formation. Whoosh! Although this person's clothes were tattered and his body was covered in blood, he looked rather wretched. However, the guards all recognized that this was Sect Master Lu Feiyu. Chapter 1295. The guards all stared at Lu Feiyu, dumbfounded. They had no idea what had happened. They couldn't imagine how their sect leader, who had always been high above everyone else, had turned into such a bear. Just as they were stunned, Lu Feiyu's sharp gaze swept over. He ordered coldly, "Close the teleportation formation immediately. Do not allow anyone to enter the sect." With that, he also leapt into the sky, turning into a streak of light and disappearing. The guards stared at his departing figure, unable to recover for a long time. It was currently afternoon. The sun shone brilliantly high in the sky, and a gentle breeze blew across the sea. Ji Tianxing sped through the sky, flying towards the east as fast as lightning. The further he flew, the deeper he would be into the eastern sea's ruins of End. The further he would be from the profound sky continent, and the more dangerous the situation would be. Ji Tianxing obviously knew this, but he had no choice but to fly with all his might. He did not dare to stop at all. He had no choice. Forefather Sanju and Lu Feiyu were just a few dozen kilometers behind him, pursuing him relentlessly. If he turned around and flew back, he would run into Forefather Sanju. It would be equivalent to walking right into a trap. 4 hours later, Ji Tianxing's soul sword had used up too much of his soul power. Its light had become dimmer and dimmer. His flying speed had greatly decreased, and he was rather tired as well. Very soon, Forefather Sanju caught up. When they were still 5 kilometers away, Forefather Sanju waved his hands. His sleeves fluttered as he cast a secret technique. He unleashed a wave of golden light that blotted out the sky. Heaven-capturing palm. The dazzling golden light immediately condensed into a huge palm 100 meters wide. It descended from the sky and grabbed at Ji Tianxing. Within the range of the golden palm, a terrifying suppressive force enveloped Ji Tianxing. As if he had fallen into a swamp, his flying speed decreased sharply once more. He struggled with all his might but could not escape. Just as Ji Tianxing was about to be captured by the golden palm, he hurriedly swung his broken sword at the critical moment, stabbing at the golden palm with all his might. Stab! Swish! A speck of cold light appeared, instantly piercing through the golden palm. Then it exploded, releasing a blinding white light that blotted out the sky. Boom! Amidst a deafening muffled sound, the giant golden palm was blown to pieces on the spot, turning into countless golden fragments that splashed out. With Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's heaven-capturing palm broken, the pressure on Ji Tianxing was greatly reduced, and he hurriedly increased his speed to escape. However, Old Ancestor Sanju did not have the extravagant hope of capturing him when he used the heaven-capturing palm. It was only to delay his escape. Just as he was about to turn and flee, Forefather 3 Ultimates had already caught up to him, attacking him from behind. Thief! Don't even think about escaping. 3,000 feet away from him, Forefather 3 Absolutes let out a roar filled with killing intent. He formed a sword seal with both hands and waved it at lightning speed. Milky Way 1,000 swords. He let out a low growl and continuously released hundreds of dark golden sword lights from his hands, shooting out like a rain of arrows. Swish! Swish! The hundreds of golden swords scattered, forming a huge sword net, immediately enveloping Ji Tianxing's figure. Just as Ji Tianxing was about to cast a spell to defend himself, the hundreds of golden swords quickly split into tens of thousands of golden sword lights. Swish! 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 In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of faint golden sword lights appeared, enveloping an area of 3,000 feet in the sky, forming a spherical sword net. The golden sword net spun rapidly as the tens of thousands of sword lights madly attacked Ji Tianxing, wanting to tear him to pieces. Ji Tianxing was completely drowned by the sword lights. He could not see his figure, nor could he break out of the encirclement. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes hurriedly took out 9 Soul Dharma eyes and activated his soul domain, wanting to suppress Ji Tianxing here. Swish! 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 9 half-gold and half-white Soul Dharma eyes shone with golden and white light, flying in all directions and scattering in the surrounding sky. A short while later, a huge screen of golden and white light appeared, immediately enveloping an area of 100 miles. This round screen of golden and white light was like a canopy, sealing off the sky and sea region. This was Old Ancestor 3 Absolute Soul Domain, the 9-Dragon Sword Domain. 9,000-meter-long golden dragons could be clearly seen on the screen of light that covered the sky. They were swimming around quickly. The formless power of the domain suppressed an area of 100 miles, causing the air and sea within the screen of light to be emptied. This area of 100 miles was completely under Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's control. He was the ruler of this area. He was proficient in formations and sword techniques, so he fused these two techniques into his domain. Not only did the 9-Dragon Sword Domain contain the mysteries of formations, it also contained shocking sword chi, possessing unbelievable power. When the domain was formed, Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He became calm and confident. He had absolute confidence and certainty. Ji Tianqing was suppressed in the 9-Dragon Sword Domain and had no chance of escaping. There was no doubt that he would die. Unless an Essence Soul Paragon came to save him, the 9-Dragon Sword Domain was invincible. At the same time, the sword net formed by tens of thousands of golden lights gradually collapsed and dissipated. Ji Tianqing's figure appeared. He was currently wrapped in a pair of wide golden wings, standing in the sky unscathed. Clearly, he had used the Kenshin battle robe to block Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's Milky Way swords. Even if he was killed by the tens of thousands of swords, he was still safe and sound. This result was within Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's expectations. He stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze, carefully observing the golden wings on his back. Ha ha ha, no wonder you're so monstrous. Not only has your body been tempered to the extreme, but you also have so many powerful treasures. If I'm not wrong, your golden wings are probably an Essence Soul Paragon treasure, right? Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes grinned, revealing a sinister sneer. There was even a hint of greed in his eyes. Although he was an Ancestor-level expert who had lived for close to 2,000 years, he had never come into contact with an Essence Soul Paragon treasure. In any case, Ji Tianqing was already trapped by the 9-Dragon Sword Domain and would definitely die. When the time came, the pair of wings would fall into his hands. He could borrow the power of this treasure to break through the Essence Soul realm and become a paragon. Ji Tianqing had seen through Old Ancestor 3 Absolute scheme long ago. He stood in the sky with a cold expression, silently recovering his magic power. Earlier, he had taken the opportunity to consume a few Soul Paragon pills within the net of golden swords. Right now, Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes was in no hurry to attack. He would rather stall for time and catch his breath first. However, Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's soul was too powerful, and his eyes were extremely sharp. He only needed to glance at Ji Tianqing twice to see that he had already consumed pills and was rapidly recovering his strength. Old Ancestor 3 Absolute stroked his beard, revealing a cold sneer of disdain on his old face. He said in a mocking tone, "You're quite cunning, kid. It's truly unbelievable. While blocking my Milky Way swords, you're also able to consume pills and secretly recover your magic power. If you hadn't started a massacre in my sect, I would have been delighted to see you and would have taken you in as a disciple." Chapter 1296. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows when he heard Ancestor Sanju's words and expression. Disgust filled his face. "Ancestor Sanju, I originally had some respect for you. After all, you're a progenitor who's lived for 2,000 years. However, you're clearly envious and black-hearted. You want to kill me and take my black dragon and god artifact, yet you still act so compassionate. How disgusting. Put away that disgusting face of yours. Do you really think you can take me as your disciple? Are you even worthy? Are you worthy?" These three simple words were like a sharp blade that pierced into Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's heart. This was definitely the greatest humiliation and disrespect that Ancestor Sanju had ever experienced in his life. He was instantly enraged and flew into a rage. His entire body surged with murderous intent, and his eyes were dyed with a layer of blood red. "You arrogant little bastard who doesn't know your place. You're actually so reckless. Since you're in such a hurry to die, I'll satisfy you. I'll grant you death right now." Ancestor Sanju used all his strength in his fury. His sleeves fluttered as he waved his hands, controlling the power of the 9-Dragon Sword Domain. 10,000 Sword Strike. Along with his furious roar, the nine-dragon sword domain within a radius of 50 kilometers immediately condensed tens of thousands of sharp golden swords. They erupted with an unstoppable sharp sword chi and blasted towards Ji Tianqing. Swish! 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 Over 10,000 golden swords struck out at the same time. Like a storm, they immediately drowned out Ji Tianqing. The area within 15 kilometers was filled with resplendent golden light. It was so dazzling that it was hard to open one's eyes. The terrifying sword chi stabbed at Ji Tianqing wildly, wanting to grind him to smithereens. Ji Tianqing's face immediately changed when he sensed the might of the 10,000 swords. He hurriedly closed his golden wings to protect himself. Bang! 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 The endless golden swords struck the golden wings one after another, producing a series of muffled sounds. The golden wings trembled under the attack of the sword light, flashing with a dazzling golden light. Their power was rapidly declining and disappearing. Ji Tianqing was beaten to the point that his body trembled. He kept swaying and retreating, unable to bear the heavy burden. Although the Kenshin battle robe was a divine artifact, its defense was invincible. However, this divine artifact still needed his power to activate, and it would consume a large amount of magic power. Under the onslaught of the 10,000 swords, the golden wings would not be able to hold on for long before their power was exhausted. Soon, 20 breaths had passed. Ji Tianqing was killed over 10,000 times by the sword beams, and was pushed tens of miles back. Although he wasn't injured, his face was pale and he was panting heavily. The power of the golden wings was finally exhausted. They became dim and retracted back into his body. However, the power of the tens of thousands of sword lights was still abundant, and they continued to bombard him. Without the protection of his wings, Ji Tianqing could only conjure a shield of magic power to block the onslaught of the 10,000 swords. Pang pang pang. Following a series of muffled sounds, Ji Tianqing's magic power shield trembled violently, and dense cracks appeared on it. After a few breaths, his magic power shield completely collapsed, and it exploded into fragments that filled the sky. Countless golden swords struck his body, and he was sent flying back, crashing into the sea below. Every inch of his skin was pierced by the golden swords more than 100 times. Fortunately, his body was strong enough to block the attacks of the swords, and there were no wounds or bloody holes. However, his skin was dark green and purple from the attacks, and he looked extremely miserable. A heart-wrenching pain invaded his entire body, causing him to twitch and almost faint from the pain. Forefather 3 Absolute stood high in the sky, watching Ji Tianqing being killed by the 10,000 swords and looking miserable. He immediately revealed a mocking sneer. He put his hands behind his back, looking confident and exuding a domineering aura. Kid, have you seen how powerful I am? It's not too late for you to admit defeat and beg for mercy now. I'm benevolent. As long as you're willing to hand over that black dragon and submit to me, I'll take you in as my adopted son, and carefully nurture and teach you. Before he could finish speaking, Ji Tianqing's angry curses came from the sword light that filled the sky. In your fucking dreams. Damned old man, I'll cut you into 8 pieces one day. Forefather 3 Absolute's expression darkened, and he frowned. He said in a sinister tone, "You're really stubborn. You won't cry until you see the coffin." As he spoke, he waved his hands and cast a spell, controlling the power of the 9-dragon sword domain. Instantly, 9,000-meter-long golden dragons flew out of the huge light shield, and pounced towards Ji Tianqing with bared fangs and brandished claws. Swoosh! The 10,000 sword lights that enveloped Ji Tianqing dissipated, and the pressure on him was greatly reduced. He revealed an expression of relief. However, before he could heave a sigh of relief, the 9 golden dragons charged over from all directions, drowning his body. Boom boom boom! Every golden dragon extended their claws and fangs, and launched a frenzied attack on him. A golden dragon extended its huge claw, and slapped him away. He tumbled in the sky, and his head was spinning. He could not tell north from south. At this moment, another golden dragon spat out golden flames, and sent him flying back. Before he could react, he was swept by a huge dragon tail, and immediately turned around and flew to the other side. The 9 golden dragons were like cats toying with a mouse, trampling on him without restraint, and kicking him around like a ball. He could not resist at all, and was covered in wounds from the attacks of the 9 golden dragons. Blood poured out of his mouth and nose, and his soul was shaken. His consciousness was somewhat blurry. Fortunately, his physical defense was strong, and that was why he could withstand such ferocious attacks. If it were Lu Feiyu, she would have been torn to pieces by the 9 golden dragons long ago. Forefather 3 Absolute stood in the sky with his hands behind his back, watching this scene with a smile. His expression became more and more mocking. So what if you're the #1 genius of the continent? You dare to be impudent in front of me? Only death awaits you. To be able to kill such a monstrous genius is definitely the happiest thing in my life. At the same time, Ji Tianqing was anxiously thinking of a way to escape while being surrounded by the 9 golden dragons. Forefather 3 Absolute strength and the power of the 9 dragon sword domain were so strong that it made him despair. However, he was unwilling to admit defeat, and he could not give up struggling. There was still a glimmer of hope in his heart. Burial of Heaven. Do you have any way to escape from this damned domain? Burial of Heaven had been devouring soul crystals in the broken sword, and quickly recovered its strength and vitality. Now that it heard Ji Tianqing's call, it ended its cultivation and said in a low voice, "With your strength, it's already not easy for you to last so long against a half-step immortal soul expert. Although this soul domain is strong, it's nothing to me. I can break it in an instant." You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.